Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. Tariffs, investment, and deregulation. The White House today is looking back at President Trump's first 100 days back in office. We'll have more on how the president's trade policies have reshaped the economy so far. And how much has President Trump delivered on his campaign promises in his first 100 days? Our own Kevin Hogan and I give you a report card. And a closer look at Doge. What has the department done to improve government efficiency? And what happens next? We discuss with a panel. Carmakers can breathe a sigh of relief as a deal is reached to ease tariffs on foreign auto parts. More on that agreement. President Trump's policies in the Middle East help secure the release of hostages held for over a year in the Gaza Strip. And his policies toward Iran will likely shape security in the region for years to come. From cracking down on artificial food dyes to examining the root causes of autism, we take a look at some of the key moments in advancing the Make America Healthy Again agenda. And marking the first 100 days of the president's second term, the White House is touting President Trump's economic record while addressing concerns over trade policies. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley will bring us the message that officials at the White House are zeroing in on today.
Manufacturing, domestic manufacturing, and resetting global trade imbalances. Now, when the Trump administration came into office, there was a deficit, a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars per year. Now, these tariffs on other countries are to reset that imbalance. Right now, the U.S. has a 10% tariff across the board on all trading partners, with a pause for 90 days on reciprocal tariffs, a pause on all countries except for China. Now, Secretary Scott Bessent said that the future of the U.S. trade is going to include imports, income from tariffs, as well as income from taxes. Take a look.
What President Trump is referring to is the ability for tariff revenue to give income tax relief. And I think there's a very good chance that we will see this in the upcoming tax bill. The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all of those immediately.
One can say that the tariffs have opened the door for negotiations, as the U.S. is now negotiating with 90 trading partners in other countries. Now, as far as what Bessent also said at the event today, he was talking about how domestic manufacturing has seen a rise in terms of Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had said that $5 trillion in commitments for investments in the U.S. have been made in President Trump's first 100 days. That includes $500 billion from OpenAI, $500 billion from Apple, another $500 billion from NVIDIA. And we also have the largest chip manufacturing company in the world, TSMC, based in Taiwan, investing another $100 billion here in Arizona, actually, to build infrastructure. Here's Secretary Scott Bessent on this.
Economic security is national security is economic security, and we saw during COVID that our supply chains got cut off, and we need to bring back a lot of those supply chains, whether it's in semiconductors, medicines, the steel, and we have to onshore those. So it's a combination of making trade free and fair and remedying this gaping national security hole that he was left with.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also said that President Trump, before he heads over to Michigan for a rally to celebrate his first 100 days touting his accomplishments, he's going to be signing executive orders here at the White House related to auto tariffs. Now, he's going to Michigan, which is the heart of the automaking manufacturing in America, as particularly Detroit is. So we're looking forward to what he says there. The White House called out Amazon, saying that labeling tariffs on its products, on its price tag for its products on its website is very political. Take a look.
So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Now, Amazon has responded recently in a statement after this announcement, saying that, quote, the team that runs our ultra-low-cost Amazon Hall store has considered the idea of listing import charges on certain products. Teams discuss ideas all the time. This was never a consideration for the main Amazon site, and nothing has been implemented on any Amazon properties. Now, Caroline Levitt's comments come as the U.S. has a tariff on China of across-the-board tariff of 145%, and China back on the U.S. 125%. Now, this was all started because originally the U.S. imposed tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada for their roles in fentanyl coming into the U.S. Now, both Canada and Mexico have stepped up their border security to prevent that, but China has retaliated with higher tariffs. And a House Select Committee on the CCP back in April of last year has found that the Chinese Communist Party is directly subsidizing the export and manufacturing of these fentanyl precursor chemicals making their way into the U.S.
Soon, President Trump is going to fly to Michigan. He's scheduled to hold a rally tonight, marking his 100th day back in office. Now, Michigan is known for its auto industry, and Detroit is actually nicknamed Motor City. Ahead of the visit, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is hinting at potential good news for automakers.
We're hearing from a lot of different sectors.
The Trump administration is indicating it has reached a deal with automakers involving tariffs. They face a potential 25% duty on most parts that's been slated to begin by Saturday. It's in addition to the tariffs already in place for steel, aluminum, and almost all imported vehicles. The Commerce Secretary says the auto deal rewards, quote, companies who manufacture domestically while providing runway to manufacturers who have expressed their commitment to invest in America. In a statement, GM's CEO says she's grateful to President Donald Trump. His tariffs often appear fluid.
He's fearless in fighting for every American because these things will benefit our economy and will benefit every American.
Another trade policy change this week involves Chinese imports worth $800 or less. They're set to lose their tariff exemption Friday.
So now that President Donald Trump has been in office for 100 days, how is he doing on his campaign promises? Kevin Hogan and I took a look back. We're recapping President Donald Trump's second term back in office. He's made a lot of promises for the second presidency, but we've narrowed it down to the 5 key promises.
That's right, Fiona. President Trump is very ambitious with his goals on the economy and on immigration. Where to start?
Well, Kevin, let's start with securing the border, because that was a huge topic of conversation and a promise that President Trump made during his campaign trail.
Okay, in assessing this, let's look at the facts. President Trump was able to achieve record low border crossings in the months of February and March, and this is down significantly from what we saw under the Biden administration. At the same time, he has sent more military, those Stryker units, to detect illegal activity along the border, as well as shutting down the CBP One app. This was used by migrants to virtually schedule their asylum appointments, but President Trump said that it was being abused in that there were people that it was basically just paroling and admitting people that were not allowed to be in this country.
And so based on that, Kevin, I think we're going to give this promise, securing the border, a check. And we're going to move on to looking at improving the economy. Another big one, Kevin, because President Donald Trump said he wants to bring investment back to the U.S. and make Americans' lives better. Okay, right. So let's look at investments that President Trump says are a direct result of the tariffs that he puts. That's $500 billion from Apple. You got $100 billion from TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, building those AI chips and also AI supercomputers out there. You know, you talk about automotive, Hyundai, $23 billion, Novartis, Swiss pharma company, Roche, $50 billion. So again, these are massive investments that Trump takes credit for because he says these companies, they just don't want to pay tariffs. So they're coming and investing in the United States. But at the same time, the CNBC All-American Economic Survey shows that 55% of Americans disapprove of the job that Trump is doing on the economy. That's the lowest it's been in his entire presidential career, first and second term thus far. But there's a caveat to that because Republicans remain largely in support of what President Trump is doing on the economy. However, Democrats have a very, very negative view of the economy, and that's primarily what's driving these numbers down. Well, still a lot of fluctuation, a lot of uncertainty here. I think we're going to have to give the president some more time to figure that one out. But let's look at combating DEI, combating diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is something we've seen the president take action on, both in the government and in these higher education institutes.
Yeah, so Trump took aim at Harvard University in that he was withholding billions, $2 billion of federal monies going to the school because he wants them to end their DEI practices. No more DEI hires based on ethnicity or so forth. He wants them to hire and admit people based on their merit. And furthermore, the Trump administration has required the Attorney General to urge private sector completely to get rid of all the DEI programs. And he's also signed a memo that ends the DEI programs in the Foreign Service.
So I think we're going to give this one a check, Kevin. Now, let's talk about ending the war in Ukraine on day one. We heard the president say that. He said he was going to end the war within 24 hours of coming back into office.
Right, so it's very clear the war is still going on. There's still fighting and carnage happening in Europe and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, President Trump did say that the day one comment was an exaggeration. He said he was being sarcastic, and people know that. And he also pointed out that the war's been going on for over 3 years and that he just got in and people are asking him, hey, what's taking you so long? But that said, President Trump is working very hard at securing a peace deal between these two countries. Keep in mind, he did say they would take a pass if either party, Russia or Ukraine, makes it too hard. But meeting with Zelensky at the White House, the Vatican, working with Saudi Arabia to broker a peace deal with the Russians, as well as just working towards a minerals deal with Ukraine. So working very hard, but the war is still ongoing.
That's right. As you said, he's still putting a lot of work into this, but specifically on this promise of ending the war on day one, we're going to have to give him a promise not kept on that one. All right, final promise here, Kevin. Unleashing energy, U.S. energy dominance. How is the president doing?
Well, Fiona, you've heard it, we've heard it, the moniker drill, baby, drill. Trump has definitely signed the Unleash American Energy Executive Order for this exact purpose, deregulating more access to oil, natural gas, nuclear energy, greenlighting coal, nixing these climate initiatives, doing what he can to bolster the American energy infrastructure.
All right, so I think it's fair to give this one a check as well. And there we have it, 5 of President Donald Trump's key promises for this second term. We've got securing the border, improving economy, combating DEI, ending the Ukraine war on day one, and of course, unleashing energy. Of course, we're only 100 days into this second presidency, Kevin. There's still a lot of time for things to be done, so we're going to have to keep an eye on what the president does next.
Yes, and while President Trump did not end the Ukraine war on day one, there is still plans, there's still peace agreements that are being worked out as we speak. So we'll have to take more time and see, and we're going to have more 100 days coverage for you, and so stay tuned with us.
And moving on, lawmakers are back in Washington. Republicans are hitting the ground running on big budget changes. What will this new budget look like, and what federal spending is on the chopping block? NTD's Melina Wisecup reports.
Today, lawmakers are getting down into the details on a new federal budget. House Speaker Mike Johnson met with President Trump and 5 other budget leaders in Congress on Monday to talk strategy.
We're still on our schedule. I think we can meet it. As you know, we have 7 committees marking up this week, 4 the following week, and then that third week, I believe we can pass it by Memorial Day. I do. Yeah.
Border security and immigration policy are the biggest focus. Lawmakers have approved $200 billion to increase spending in these areas. Defense spending will increase by around $100 billion, with a strong focus on the Navy and shipbuilding to deter China's aggression in the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea. Meanwhile, Republicans aim to cut at least $2 trillion from federal spending over the next decade. Committee meetings start this week, first in the House Armed Services and Education Workforce committees.
In my particular budget area, Department of Education and Labor, those issues, we're looking at some significant cuts that will, in fact, I think, help our educational policy moving forward.
Democrats protested the planned budget changes with a sit-in on the Capitol steps over the weekend. They've continued to warn against cuts to Medicaid.
They're going to hurt children, hurt families, hurt seniors, hurt people with disabilities, close hospitals, shut down nursing homes, and people will die. This is a matter of life and death.
Though Republicans have vowed not to kick off eligible Medicaid recipients and to only cut fraud and abuse from the program. Tax policy is up for change, too. The GOP plans to extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts and make a new law to prevent tax collection on tips and Social Security. Once the budget markups are complete, lawmakers will vote on one final bill in both the House and the Senate. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Coming up, we're going to be taking a closer look at Doge's track record over the past 100 days. We'll be asking experts what has been done and what remains to be completed. Stay tuned.
Supermodel Cindy Crawford doesn't just walk the red carpet, she rocks it. At 58, she steals the show and wows the press. Hollywood Life exclaims, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. While Page 6 raves, she's still as gorgeous as ever. What is Cindy's secret? It's meaningful beauty. And now with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever. Watch as the appearance of lines and wrinkles are diminished in just weeks. It's no wonder everyone's talking about meaningful beauty.
My makeup artist said, your skin has been looking great lately. What products are you using? And I said, I'm using Meaningful Beauty. And she said, really? I've tried Meaningful Beauty before. I love those products. And then the other lady down in the trailer said, I use Meaningful Beauty. I love it.
Our new and improved formulas deliver age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin where wrinkles begin. And this brand new offer is Cindy's most exciting ever. Because when you order, you'll get Cindy's exclusive Super Brightening Duo, a $120 value absolutely free. First, you'll get 60 of our Revive and Brighten eye masks, the celebrity secret that visibly smooths, awakens, and restores the area around your eyes. Next, discover the power of our Vitamin C Biphase Brightening Oil for an immediate boost of glamour and glow.
I'm not ashamed to say I am 53 years old. Thank you, Cindy.
The total effect of this free gift package? A red carpet ready complexion. Get all this, a $300 value for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
So make the call or go online now and put yourself on the path to the most beautiful skin of your life. Trust me, it's worth it.
This special offer is not available anywhere else, so don't delay. Scan the code, go to meaningfulbeauty.com, or call the number on your screen now.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Dave's Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Dave's Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
911, where is your emergency?
Thanks for staying with us. President Donald Trump has just reached the 100-day mark in his second term. NTD's Daniel Monahan looks at some of his key executive orders and the efforts of the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge.
President of the United States.
President Trump started out his second term with a bang, taking swift action on the southern border. On day one, the president declared a national emergency, committing to a significant military presence, including National Guard deployments. Trump reinstated Remain in Mexico and signed an executive order to designate cartels terrorist organizations.
They're killing our people. They're killing 250, 300,000 American people a year.
Trump also moved to challenge birthright citizenship, triggering numerous court battles.
We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know.
To reshape the federal government, Trump issued a sweeping executive order to end diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, practices.
Merit. Our country's going to be based on merit again. Can you believe it?
He ordered federal workers back to the office and imposed a hiring freeze across executive agencies. In his inaugural address, Trump made his stance on gender clear.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Through executive orders, Trump banned cross-sex procedures on minors, protected women's sports, and targeted gender policies in the military.
If you let men take over women's sports teams or invade your locker rooms, you will be investigated for violations of Title IX and risk your federal funding. You know, if you'd like to gather around me, I think I'm going to be okay. Come on. Come on.
The Trump administration later filed suit against the state of Maine for not complying. Maine Governor Janet Mills said the lawsuit was part of a pressure campaign by Washington to force Maine to ignore its own human rights laws. In education, Trump signed an order to dismantle the Department of Education, citing high spending and poor results.
We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs.
He moved quickly on deregulation, signing an order requiring 10 regulations removed for every new one added.
That'll have a big impact on regulation, getting rid of so many ridiculous regulations.
Another executive order declared a national energy emergency and aimed to unleash domestic energy production. Trump also moved against government waste and corruption, creating the Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge. Under Elon Musk's leadership, Doge targeted agencies like USAID, flagging questionable spending.
$47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru.
Doge implemented a comprehensive strategy to downsize the federal workforce, resulting in over 260,000 civilian positions being eliminated through layoffs, buyouts, and early retirements. The changes have sparked backlash. The Trump administration is now facing a wave of legal challenges to both its executive orders and Doge's actions, friction that could slow the administration's push for dramatic reform. Critics like Senator Elizabeth Warren accused Musk and Trump of threatening Social Security, which they denied.
This is Donald Trump and Elon Musk working together as co-presidents to keep people from getting the Social Security benefits that they earned.
Musk warned about the need to dismantle the bureaucracy.
We have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative.
And cautioned that if the U.S. doesn't address the $2 trillion deficit, the country will go bankrupt.
The interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget.
On February 19th, Trump ordered agencies to review and repeal unconstitutional or burdensome regulations. Doge also spearheaded efforts to modernize federal technology infrastructure, with Musk calling himself humble tech support.
That is almost a literal description of the work that the Doge team is doing, is helping fix the government computer systems.
President Trump praised Doge for finding tens of billions of dollars of fraud, waste, and abuse.
And Elon Musk has done an amazing job, I have to tell you. Him and his super geniuses, you know, these are seriously high IQ people.
Sweeping reforms, dramatic executive orders, and the rise of Doge signal a presidency aiming to redefine the federal government. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
So let's stay on the topic of Doge. We're now going to be joined by a panel. We've got John Hart, CEO of Open the Books. John worked alongside the late Senator Tom Coburn on the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act of 2006, which laid the foundation for online public spending databases. And we've also got Timothy Allen Simon, former Public Utilities Commissioner for California and Appointments Secretary for Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he is also a political strategist and attorney. John, Timothy, great to have both of you on today to take a look.
Thank you, Fiona.
To take a look at this department. My goodness. All right. Doge. Trump created it on his first day back in office. Now, Elon Musk then initially said Doge would cut spending by $2 trillion. Doge is now saying that it's cut about $160 billion. Let's go over to you, Timothy, first. How do you rate Doge's performance over the past 100 days when it comes to increasing efficiency in the government?
Well, if we look at the number of lawsuits that have transpired and the abdication of the congressional role in funding, which is clearly stated in Article 2 of the Constitution. I think the efficiency is questionable. I believe the intent is honorable. Both sides of the aisle have wanted to remove waste and fraud. But in terms of efficiency, I think it has become more of a cultural war weapon, quite frankly, with the demonization of federal workers and federal agencies, more so than a collaborative effort to find greater efficiencies. The $100 billion in savings is nowhere near what was projected when Doge was originally created. And again, it's falling outside the constitutional checks and balances that the framers intended for our nation.
John, Timothy brings up an interesting term there, a cultural war. I want to get your initial take on how you think Doge has been performing.
Well, I think we have a culture of waste in Washington. I think that's what the administration is trying to get at. And this is not the first attempt to downsize government. Back in the 1980s, President Reagan had the Grace Commission, and that concluded that 1 out of every 3 tax dollars is wasted. So if you extrapolate that to today's numbers, that's where you get over $2 trillion. And when I worked for the late Senator Tom Coburn, he was on the Simpson-Bowles Commission. And during that era, we actually did reduce spending for the first time since the end of the Korean War. Between 2012 and 2013, we also got rid of earmarks for over a decade that saved $140 billion. So what I would encourage Doge to do is think of this transition where Musk is pulling back. It's an opportunity for Congress and citizen groups in our organization to step up and help them be successful. Because, I think the other panelist's point is we all have a stake in Doge succeeding, and that no one wants tax dollars to be wasted. And it's going to take an effort of the Congress and the administration and citizens to make their voices heard, to make these changes permanent. We need permanent transparency. We need an upgraded, enhanced transparency. And we need an agency reorganization that returns dollars and decisions back to the American people.
So, John, that leads perfectly into my next question here, because President Trump, he's saying that Musk could be leaving in a few months. He also touched on the future of Doge. Here's the president. Let's take a look.
So I want him to stay as long as possible, but there'll be a point where he's going to have to leave. And when he does, the secretaries will take totally over, and Doge will stay active. We have a lot of smart people. A lot of those people, I believe, are going to go into the agencies, and they'll work on it from the inside.
All right, so Elon Musk himself, he's also said that he's leaving soon. So the president there saying that Doge, it'll stay active even after Musk leaves, that there will still be people working from the inside of agencies to fulfill Doge's agenda. Timothy, what would that look like to you?
Well, it would look like the more traditional form of governance in our country, that being that the agencies coming before Congress and working with Congress to establish their budgets, and yes, remove the areas of waste and fraud. I don't understand what the resistance to that is now, since both houses are controlled by the Republican Party, and I think from all indications are on board with the president's economic agenda, even though we're seeing some levels of behind-the-scenes dissension regarding tariffs. So I feel that maybe we'll go back to normalcy. But I also understand the desire, and it wasn't just Simpson-Bowles, but also Vice President Al Gore worked with Congress as well. Everybody wants to see their tax dollars in an efficient way. So I think the purpose of Doge, again, is honorable, but we do have methods within our structure of government. And if those methodologies are going to be changed, if we're going to take the purse strings away from Congress, that can only be done through Congress and or by decisions of the courts. We have over 100 lawsuits for a various number of reasons, and Doge's activity is one of them.
John, your response to Timothy's statements there, as well as what the potential future of Doge could look like?
Well, yeah, I would say that we do need to see members of Congress step up. I think, you had a clip of Senator Elizabeth Warren earlier. She's been very critical of Elon Musk, but where is her plan? Where is her plan to get rid of our deficit and our debt? And when we're spending more on interest payments on our deficits than we are on defense, that's a national security threat. Nations that do that do not stay great for very long. And so we need to see the critics step up and actually offer some ideas and offer some proposals to downsize government. And again, every dollar saved in Washington is a dream realized somewhere else in America. Is that this is the founders understood that the natural order of things in government is for liberty to diminish and for government to gain ground. And so having Elon Musk involved and leveraging his celebrity status has been an incredibly powerful asset. So I think having him stay involved in some way is going to be very, very helpful. But it's going to be important as the next step is for Congress to really get very specific and understand exactly what Doge has uncovered, document it, and then turn it into legislation so that this can be turned into law. And the next administration can't just reverse everything the Trump administration's doing through executive orders of their own.
And I think this is a really interesting theme popping up. I spoke to two other political analysts yesterday who both also said that for lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, they feel there's not enough action right now. It's a lot of talk, but no action. Now, I want to go to the issue of transparency, John. I know you're a bit of an expert on that. So an issue that Doge has brought up was that sometimes these agencies or the administration itself didn't know where the money they spent was going, what was in these funding agreements that were being drafted up and then agreed to. And if they didn't know, then the American public certainly didn't know. So then we saw President Trump, he signed a memo ordering, and this is quote, heads of executive departments and agencies to take all appropriate actions to make public the complete details of every terminated program, canceled contract, terminated grant, or any other discontinued obligation of federal funds. John, in your opinion, do you think federal agencies have followed through on this? Is this transparency enough to ensure accountability?
Well, no, they need to do more. Look, the Constitution is really clear about transparency. It's written into Article 1. It actually precedes the First Amendment. So in the public square, transparency is like oxygen. We can't speak if we can't breathe. So if our founders had access to today's technology, I am convinced they would demand real-time transparency. And that is an achievable goal with today's technology. And I helped create USAspending.gov when I worked for Senator Coburn. He teamed up with Barack Obama to get that signed into law back in 2006. And so we need to upgrade that. We need USA Spending 2.0. We call it America's Checkbook, where anyone should be able to log on and see the same level of detail that Doge can see right now through what's called the Treasury Payment System. Again, that money in that account, America's bank account, that's our money. That's not the government's money. We have the same right to see that as we do our own personal checking account. And that's what we need to get to. And one of Doge's challenges right now is it's very hard to confirm or deny what they found because there's a gap in the reporting between what they've claimed and what you can see on USA Spending. And they want to close that gap, and members are working on that. And that ought to be their number one goal, is to close that transparency and reporting gap so we can engage all the voices of the American people and get at this issue together as a country.
Timothy, how do you see this? President Trump has been promising what he calls radical transparency.
I'll never argue against transparency. I think it is. I practiced in securities regulations for a long time, and we call it, the disinfectant of sunlight in terms of having the ability to review the facts, the relevant facts, and the data. I think that's very important. But I think a reckless way of carrying it out, if you look at the number of federal employees, for example, that were terminated and then brought back, if you look at the programs that were terminated and then reinstated, I think there needs to be a more formidable process. Now, in honest to Mr. Musk, and I was honored to represent one of his companies. I drive a Tesla also, in my firm. This is very commonplace in how he is a disruptive figure in business, but government is for and by the people. And the very unelected employees that he criticizes, well, the critics of him have said he was not elected to office either. So I think it comes back down to whose ox is being gored. Every administration is going to push for greater executive powers. Clearly, President Trump is of the belief that his executive powers affords him the right to carry out the disruptive measures that he's engaged in. The courts will be the final arbiter. And brilliantly enough, that's what the framers intended.
Timothy, to your point, government bloat, that doesn't happen overnight. I'm sure you know. It's a gradual buildup. So after these cuts are made, and of course we've seen it's been a tough pill to swallow and there is a lot of pushback, how do we ensure that the same type of wasteful spending doesn't start building back again over the coming decades?
Well, I do credit, and including my esteemed colleague, the deficit hawks that have been critical of both sides. Remember, the Tea Party was formed under President George W. Bush when he ran 2 wars and did a tax cut, which some say on a credit card. So I do think best practices in fiscal management, governmental fiscal management, coming from both sides of the aisle will be the sustainable difference. If it's shoved from one side of the aisle without any assent from the other party, and then, by the way, if it's shoved with the preponderance of cultural war type issues, then I don't feel it's sustainable even after the midterms when the next Congress comes into session, if history proves itself that there will be a congressional leadership. So I do feel that now is the right time, a time when, we are divided as a nation, that the president looked to modify, as he has, for example, in the tariff space, to modify and to try to work with the other side to find achievable and eventually, yes, a balanced budget, something we have not seen since going back to the Clinton administration. So I'm all in favor of that. I just feel that process is there for a reason. And when you begin to recklessly obstruct the process, then the net effects harm the American people.
And process is always very important. Back to the point of transparency for a second. Here's a clip of Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Take a look.
This president is clearly committed to transparency. You in this room see him and hear from him on a daily basis. You in this room know from covering him, it's hard to keep up with him. He is a machine working around the clock every single day.
And we have been seeing the president, he's out speaking with the press, answering questions nearly every single day. We're definitely here covering it every single day. This is a shift from the previous administration. John, is this enough to reassure Americans' concerns, especially for those that are still expressing worry and disapproval over the administration's moves, whether they be political, legal, or economic, or anything else?
No, I think it's been a very helpful shift. And, President Biden obviously wasn't mentally fit to do the kinds of events regularly that President Trump has done. And I give credit to Elon Musk as well. They've done a lot of events together. And one thing I really appreciate about Musk is he's been willing to say publicly, hey, we may make mistakes at Doge, but we're going to try to correct those mistakes. I mean, what a rare and refreshing admission of candor and flaws is that this is a very complicated, difficult process. The administrative state has been grown very intentionally over 100 years. And so the idea that they're going to come in and do it perfectly over a few hundred days, I mean, that's an unrealistic expectation. And again, to a lot of the Doge critics who are saying they don't have the power to do these things, I say to them, well, that's because you're not using your power. Use your power aggressively, and to Congress, be jealous of your constitutional power. Protect it. If you don't like Doge's cuts, offer your vision and your way of doing things that's superior, that's going to give a better result for the American people and expand, again, the realm of freedom and opportunity in this country. And so I think having the president be out publicly has been very helpful. Again, I would encourage them to, as quickly as they humanly can, to achieve real-time transparency. They have that capability because they have access to the Treasury payment system. And it's always erodes trust when government has one level of visibility and the American people don't. That is not a recipe for success. They need to close that gap as quickly as they can if they're going to be successful with the scope of changes that they want to achieve, and I believe they can achieve.
Timothy, I think John brings up an interesting point here of the ability for a government to admit to its mistakes, but then, of course, also then act to fix that mistake. How important do you find that being as someone who's worked in government? Do you think the Trump administration has done enough on that front?
I think it depends on the issue itself. For example, the tariff wars that we're experiencing, clearly there have been some adjustments, but probably no apologies. Where I do agree with John is that this president has probably provided more access to the press and our First Amendment than any president I've seen. He's very comfortable in front of the camera.
All right,
and by
gentlemen.
the way, he's comfortable in even...
Gentlemen, speaking of the president giving more access to the press, President Trump is speaking to a press gaggle right now. We're going to stop this conversation for a moment and tune into that.
It has to do with a very small percentage. If they can't get parts, we didn't want to penalize them. And they have a 1-year period and then they have an extra year, but it's for a very, very small part of the car. Basically, they're paying 25%. All right.
Mr. President, are you in the IRS? With the Internal Revenue Service? And what's your message for all retailers who could do possibly the same thing?
Yeah, nothing that really, he's a good guy. I've gotten to know him over the last couple of years, and he's done a fantastic job, so I appreciated what he did.
Sir, what is How are you? There we go. How's it going? You're going to give this speech in Michigan. You're going to list the accomplishments of the administration. Yeah. If there was one big thing that you really wanted to have happen in the first 100 days, but didn't, what would it be?
Well, I think we've done everything or it's in the process of being done. For instance, the border is in great shape. 99.9% came out again today. 99.9. That, I would say, that was my number one thing. The economy would be certainly right up there, and I think it's doing great. We were losing billions and billions of dollars a day with trade, and now I have that down to a very low level, and soon we're going to be making a lot of money. We're going to be reducing people's taxes, and we're going to get the big, look, a very important element that we're working on now, maybe more important than anything with the border in good shape, is the fact, is the fact that we want to get, and very importantly, the big, beautiful New Deal. If we get that done, that's the biggest thing, what's happening in Congress right now. And I think we're going to get it done. We have great Republican support. If the Democrats blocked it, you'd have a 60% tax increase. I don't think that's going to happen. We have great support from Republicans. So the big, beautiful deal, that's what we want, the bill. I think the next period of time, I think my biggest focus will be on Congress with the deal that we're working on. That'll be the biggest bill in the history of our country in terms of tax cuts and regulation cuts and other things.
The Canadian election.
As Pope? I'd like to be Pope. That would be my number one choice. No, I don't know. I have no preference. I must say we have a cardinal that happens to be out of a place called New York who's very good. So we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President, you are doing so much for Africa. You are the first president that in the first 100 days focused on Africa for the first time in the history of this country. Are you planning maybe in the future visit the continent?
Sure, I would do that. I would do that, absolutely.
Mr. President, what's the biggest challenge? Do you want to Mr. President?
Mr. President,
yeah, go ahead.
will you speak to the Prime Minister of Australia at all? Mr. Trump, the Australian Prime Minister is having an election this weekend.
Yeah.
Will you speak to him about trade?
They are calling, and I will be talking to him, yes.
Did you happen to do something with the tariffs and automobiles? Were you worried about the automobiles?
No, not at all. We're just giving them a little chance because in some cases they can't get the parts fast enough. So this is just a little transition. It's 15% for 1 year and just 10% for another. It's a little bit. And it has to do, that's only the percentage of parts on the car. So it's a little bit of help for people that will be doing a great job. And these are all people, for the most part, that are building plants and will be working here. So it's a little transition. Go ahead, what? India's coming along great. I think we'll have a deal with India. The Prime Minister, as you know, was here 3 weeks ago, and they want to make a deal. We'll see what happens. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, what's the biggest challenge you'll have from 100 days? Mr. President, how do you rate your 100 days out of 10?
Okay, there we go. President Donald Trump answering some reporters' questions right before he gets on that helicopter to go to his rally in Michigan. Timothy, I apologize for cutting you off, but there we go. The president making himself available to the press. I'll let you finish your point.
Well, I rest my case. He makes himself extremely accessible to the press. I think his background as a reality television star and more or less a bon vivant in American society, and particularly in New York society, makes him very comfortable in front of the camera and the microphone. I agree with John that former President Biden aged differently. And I think as he aged, his communication abilities at times were challenged. And I think that was the advantage that President Trump carried out, in this regard, in terms of the only 100 days that Vice President Harris had, and the Trump emblem or moniker or culture already being well established. As you hear him talk about the tariff adjustments that he's making, the Constitution gives that authority to Congress to establish what it calls excises. They don't necessarily say tariffs. And I think that's another gray area that the courts will have to be the final arbiter on in this particular case. If the decision goes more in favor of President Trump, then we'll see a massive expansion of executive powers in our government, something that some would like to see. Some call it the imperial presidency. I, for one, believe our checks and balances are there for a reason. We do not elect a king. And I think every president, no matter how well-intended, no matter how powerful they may be from the right, the left, or the center, has to have the checks and balances to ensure that this democracy is what the framers had intended.
All right, gentlemen, before we go here, let's get your closing thoughts. John, President Trump, in this goal to increase transparency, we've seen him order the release of those MLK, RFK, JFK files. Attorney General Bondi, she's also released a phase 1 of Epstein files. It remains to be seen if any other files will come out of that. How substantial has this move been? And just in terms of the general future, John, what does Doge need to do next?
Well, I think regarding those files, I think our focus as an organization is more on government spending, and I think that's the long-term important transparency issue at play here. Is that the public has the right to know how government is spending their money. So the next step, I think, for the Trump administration and for Doge, again, needs to be to close the gap that exists right now between their access to this what's called the Treasury payment system. That's effectively America's checkbook, and again, that's our money. We got to be able to see that. And to give the American people visibility on that and improve the work that we did with Obama back in 2006 that created USA Spending. That we currently have all federal spending online, but there's a 30-day delay, sometimes longer. So when Doge claims a cut or they claim a reform, it's difficult even for our organization, and I'm very favorably inclined to most of what they're doing. It's very hard for us to verify what they've done because we can't have the same level of access that they do. So again, it's in their interest to give that visibility to every single American and to Congress. And I'm very sympathetic to Timothy's point too, is I want to see them make Congress great again. And the problem in Washington is not executive overreach as much as it's legislative underreach. Congress needs to assert itself and to offer ideas and to offer solutions that will be durable and to win the hearts and minds of the public. And to the extent that the administration can help rebalance that, that would go a long way to helping them achieve their goals of reducing inflation and empowering individual Americans.
Well, Timothy, I have a final 15, 20 seconds here. Your final thoughts.
Well, here's where John and I agree. I believe under Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune, Congress has largely abdicated to the executive branch, which I am again certain that they are fully backing the president's policies, particularly the new big or beautiful legislation that he's proposing. But unless they exert their powers, it gives the impression, not only in this country, but even to our allies and adversaries, that we could be migrating into autocracy. And that would probably benefit our adversaries more than it would the American people in making America great again.
All right, John Hart, Timothy Allen, Simon, what a 100 days it's been. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Fiona and John. Thank you.
Coming up, President Trump's policies in the Middle East help secure the release of hostages held for over a year in the Gaza Strip, and his policies toward Iran will likely shape security in the region for years to come. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned to get a free month of home warranty protection. Tired of searching for contractors when your home appliances and systems break down, only to leave you stuck with a huge repair bill and shoddy repairs? Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and appliance breakdowns could cost thousands.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they could do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way.
I would recommend anyone who is listening to this to call Choice Home Warranty up. It eliminates anxiety, frustration, and it saves you money.
Don't let an appliance or home system break the bank, leaving you stressed. Call Choice Home Warranty before that happens and get your first month free. Plus, call in the next 5 minutes and we'll give you free limited roof leak coverage. That's a $70 value, free. Just call now.
No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. I trust Choice Home Warranty with my home, and you should too.
Year after year, Choice Home Warranty is recognized as the nation's top home warranty and has thousands of 5-star reviews from real homeowners. Experience real budget protection and call Choice Home Warranty now.
Stop throwing money down the toilet chasing contractors. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Don't wait another minute. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. That's over $100 in savings. This offer won't last long. Call now to lock in your rate and save big.
Call 800-216-9114, 800-216-9114.
Hey, boss. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
I said I'm fine.
Since I was little, it was only like me and my parents. You think you created family out of characters? Yeah, of course. I'm gonna take that and make it into a song.
Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the first deed, Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at, on the way out? In my head, in my head, in my head.
Hey, son.
Hey, Pop.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
Welcome back to Newsroom. President Donald Trump has brought a new perspective on U.S. policy in the Middle East during his first 100 days back in office. Now, his policies will likely shape security in the region for years to come. Here's NTD's Jason Perry covering Trump's first 100 days in office on the Middle East.
Even before taking office, then President-elect Donald Trump began making moves to help free the hostages held in the Gaza Strip.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone.
And on the day before he took office, the first set of hostages were released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, something the Biden administration had been trying to do for over a year. But some dispute who actually gets the credit, because former President Biden was still president at the time. And after Biden made the announcement that a ceasefire deal in the Gaza Strip had been reached, someone asked him whether he or Trump would get the credit.
Is that a joke? Oh. Thank you.
But the family members of those newly released hostages thanked Trump for his efforts.
President Trump, thank you. Thank you for your care and for making us all do the right thing. We will never forget your help.
And as many people continue to dispute who is right or wrong in the war in the Gaza Strip, Trump made it clear soon after taking office that he fully supports Israel's right to defend itself. And he invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to be the first world leader to visit him at the White House. After their meeting, Trump made an announcement that shook the airwaves around the world.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site.
He said countries like Jordan and Egypt would take in Palestinian refugees, which was met with strong resistance from their leaders.
They will do it.
What makes you say that?
They're going to do it. Okay? We do a lot for them, and they're going to do it.
Arab leaders then held an emergency summit in Egypt and fully rejected the idea of displacing residents from the territory. Trump later appeared to downplay his suggestion for the U.S. to take over the Gaza Strip, saying, quote, "Nobody is expelling any Palestinians." But Trump's announcement seems to have paved the way for Israel to begin taking over parts of the Gaza Strip. Since then, Israeli forces have been creating what they call security zones in the northern and southern Gaza Strip, which they plan to keep even after the war ends. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this in March.
The more Hamas persists in its refusal to release our hostages, the more powerful the pressure we will exert. And I say to Hamas, this includes seizing territory.
Also during Trump's first 100 days in office, he resumed his maximum pressure campaign against Iran, which has been providing weapons and money to the terrorist groups currently waging war against Israel. A key goal of the maximum pressure campaign is to drive Iranian oil exports to zero. Trump also sent a letter to the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, about negotiations for a possible nuclear deal. And Trump said, quote, "If they don't make a deal, there will be bombing."
We have a situation with Iran that something's going to happen very soon.
However, Iran said they would retaliate against the U.S. if Tehran is attacked. Afterwards, Trump ordered airstrikes to be increased against the Iran-backed Houthi terrorist group in Yemen. The group has been launching missiles at Israel and has attacked ships in the Red Sea, saying both are in support of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And since then, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has held talks with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff 3 times for talks on a nuclear deal. Araghchi said this after the latest round of talks.
I can say that this round of negotiations was much more serious than previous ones. We gradually moved into some more detailed technical discussions.
Iran hopes to see the U.S. lift economic sanctions, while Trump says the main goal is to ensure Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. Trump is set to visit the Middle East from May 13th to 16th. He'll visit Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Coming up, the Senate confirms former Senator David Perdue as ambassador to China. For years, China has been taking advantage of the U.S. on trade. Now, in President Trump's second term, what strategies and policies are being used to reset that relationship, and what progress has been made in these first 100 days? We'll have that and more in the next hour.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. President Donald Trump marks his first 100 days of his second term. He's heading to Detroit, Michigan to attend a rally this afternoon. He's also planning to give a speech at the Selfridge Air National Guard base. Carmakers can breathe a sigh of relief. President Donald Trump will sign an executive order later today to cushion the impact of his automobile tariffs. That's according to the White House. The Senate confirms former Senator David Perdue as ambassador to China. For years, China has been taking advantage of the U.S. on trade. Now, in President Trump's second term, what strategies and policies are being used to reset that relationship, and what progress has been made in these first 100 days? Securing the border was a key reason President Trump won a second term. We take an in-depth look at the actions this administration is taking to deliver on that promise. And the U.S. Navy loses a fighter jet after it falls from an aircraft carrier. One sailor receives minor injuries. Just a few months ago, conservatives had a 12-point lead in Canadian polls, but liberals pull off a major comeback to win the election. Prime Minister Mark Carney shares his plans and his comments on U.S. tariffs. Starting off this hour with some news, the Senate has confirmed former Georgia Senator David Perdue as the new U.S. ambassador to China. The vote went mainly along party lines with 51 Republicans, 15 Democrats, and 1 independent in favor. 28 Democrats voted against Perdue's confirmation, along with 1 independent. This puts Perdue in a significant role as the U.S. confronts Beijing over trade, tariffs, and national security. And marking the first 100 days of the president's second term, the White House is touting Trump's economic record while addressing concerns over trade policies. NTD's Jack Bradley brings us the message that officials at the White House are zeroing in on today.
Manufacturing, domestic manufacturing, and resetting global trade imbalances. Now, when the Trump administration came into office, there was a deficit, a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars per year. Now, these tariffs on other countries are to reset that imbalance. Right now, the U.S. has a 10% tariff across the board on all trading partners, with a pause for 90 days on reciprocal tariffs, a pause on all countries except for China. Now, Secretary Scott Bessent said that the future of the U.S. trade is going to include imports, income from tariffs, as well as income from taxes. Take a look.
What President Trump is referring to is the ability for tariff revenue to give income tax relief. And I think there's a very good chance that we will see this in the upcoming tax bill. The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all those immediately.
One can say that the tariffs have opened the door for negotiations, as the U.S. is now negotiating with 90 trading partners in other countries. Now, as far as what Besson also said at the event today, he was talking about how domestic manufacturing has seen a rise in terms of Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had said that $5 trillion in commitments for investments in the U.S. have been made in President Trump's first 100 days. That includes $500 billion from OpenAI, $500 billion from Apple, another $500 billion from NVIDIA. And we also have the largest chip manufacturing company in the world, TSMC, based in Taiwan, investing another $100 billion here in Arizona, actually, to build infrastructure. Here's Secretary Scott Besson on this.
Economic security is national security is economic security, and we saw during COVID that our supply chains got cut off, and we need to bring back a lot of those supply chains, whether it's in semiconductors, medicines, the steel, and we have to onshore those. So it's a combination of making trade free and fair and remedying this gaping national security hole that he was left with.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also said that President Trump, before he heads over to Michigan for a rally to celebrate his first 100 days, touting his accomplishments, he's going to be signing executive orders here at the White House related to auto tariffs. Now he's going to Michigan, which is the heart of the automaking manufacturing in America, as particularly Detroit is. So we're looking forward to what he says there. The White House called out Amazon, saying that labeling tariffs on its products, on its price tag for its products on its website is very political. Take a look.
So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Now, Amazon has responded recently in a statement after this announcement, saying that, quote, the team that runs our ultra-low-cost Amazon Hall store has considered the idea of listing import charges on certain products. Teams discuss ideas all the time. This was never a consideration for the main Amazon site, and nothing has been implemented on any Amazon properties. Now, Caroline Leavitt's comments come as the U.S. has a tariff on China, across the board tariff of 145%, and China back on the U.S. 125%. Now, this was all started because originally the U.S. imposed tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada for their roles in fentanyl coming into the U.S. Now, both Canada and Mexico have stepped up their border security to prevent that, but China has retaliated with higher tariffs. And a House Select Committee on the CCP back in April of last year has found that the Chinese Communist Party is directly subsidizing the export and manufacturing of these fentanyl precursor chemicals making their way into the U.S.
And turning now to the Republican-led Congress and the challenges GOP lawmakers face ahead. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has those details.
During President Trump's first 100 days in office, Democratic lawmakers have attempted different strategies to oppose the presidential agenda. Now the Democrats find themselves out of power in Washington, D.C.
So I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime, why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in CCOT? I said I'm not interested at this moment in taking a tour of CCOT. I just want to meet with Mr. Abrego Garcia.
Some Democratic lawmakers, like Senator Chris Van Hollen, have focused their messaging on opposing President Trump's immigration crackdown, while for others, like House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, his messaging has focused on opposing President Trump's spending cuts.
It is unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American that Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and House Republicans are dismantling and closing Social Security offices, jacking up wait times, and preventing hardworking Americans from securing their benefits.
The Senate, that is now in Republican control, confirmed all but one of President Trump's cabinet nominees in record time and also passed a budget resolution in line with the president's agenda.
77 million people voted for him and his agenda, and I think he deserves the opportunity to see what kind of deals he can get from some of our trading partners. And I think most of us are giving him the space in which to do that and hope that he is successful, because that's good for not only for him and his administration, but it's good for the country.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson kept his slim majority in the House united through a budget battle and managed to pass a budget resolution despite the pushback from House Freedom Caucus members.
Of course, as we pass the budget resolution, we adopted the Senate's amendments to the resolution, holding in place all of the commitments and the instructions, the guidelines that the House originally enacted. And that was a big step, because that will allow us now to move forward, to have our committees actually drafting the one big beautiful bill. There's a lot of work ahead of us, and we're really excited about that.
Congress also passed and the president signed into law the Laken-Riley Act, a bill that mandates the arrest of any illegal immigrant that has been charged with a violent crime. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The United States Navy says they lost a fighter jet after it fell from an aircraft carrier in the Red Sea. According to the Navy, the FA-18 Super Hornet was being towed when the crew lost control of the aircraft. The tow tractor fell overboard as well. Only one sailor received a minor injury from the incident. An investigation is currently underway. The FA-18 costs more than $60 million, according to the Navy. The carrier, the USS Harry S. Truman, is in the Red Sea to support operations against the Iran-backed Houthi terrorist group in Yemen. The Houthis are known for attacking ships in the Red Sea and launching missiles at Israel. The group claims its attacks are to support Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Up next, a promise to secure the border is a key reason President Trump won a second term. We take an in-depth look at the actions this administration is taking to deliver on that promise after the break.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Stay tuned to get a free month of home warranty protection. Tired of searching for contractors when your home appliances and systems break down, only to leave you stuck with a huge repair bill and shoddy repairs? Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and appliance breakdowns could cost thousands.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they could do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way.
I would recommend anyone who is listening to this to call Choice Home Warranty up. It eliminates the anxiety, frustration, and it saves you money.
Don't let an appliance or home system break the bank, leaving you stressed. Call Choice Home Warranty before that happens and get your first month free. Plus, call in the next 5 minutes and we'll give you free limited roof leak coverage. That's a $70 value, free. Just call now.
No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. I trust Choice Home Warranty with my home, and you should too.
Year after year, Choice Home Warranty is recognized as the nation's top home warranty and has thousands of 5-star reviews from real homeowners. Experience real budget protection and call Choice Home Warranty now.
Stop throwing money down the toilet chasing contractors. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Don't wait another minute. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. That's over $100 in savings. This offer won't last long. Call now to lock in your rate and save big.
Call 800-216-9114, 800-216-9114.
Welcome back. Illegal immigration, it was a top concern for voters this past election, and it gave President Trump an edge. Kevin Hogan and I went on a deep dive into the president's actions on immigration policy in his first 100 days. We're taking a look at the unprecedented action President Donald Trump has taken against illegal immigration during his first 100 days back in office. What does that mean? That means a lightning-fast response to the border crisis.
Yes, President Trump has been taking wide-ranging action on his plan to carry out what he calls the largest deportation of criminal illegal immigrants in U.S. history. So that involves sealing up the border. Fiona, tell us about what's happening down at the southwest border, what Trump's doing.
That's right, Kevin. President Donald Trump, in his first 100 days, he declares a national emergency at the border in what many are calling the border crisis. Now, he's citing the danger posed by drug smuggling, cartels, gangs, human trafficking, as well as these unvetted military-age males from adversarial nations like China. So what does this emergency declaration mean? It means that the military can go back to the border and the wall is going to be built once again.
Yeah, and speaking of the military, right here we have Stryker units going down there. Tell us about that.
That's right, Kevin. President Trump, he sees the military as a second additional layer of defense in addition to the wall to protect the U.S. at the border. Now, on April 5th, President Trump, he orders the deployment of Strykers to the border. These are these high-tech vehicles that can detect illegal activities both at night and during the day. And then around 6 days later, April 11th, President Trump orders the occupation of the Roosevelt Reservation. That's this strip of land along the border in the states of California, Arizona, New Mexico. And so essentially around 9,000 troops are now stationed at our border.
Yeah, and these Strykers, these are weapons targeting units. They don't have weapons on them at the border. They are able to detect even a mouse's movement at, daytime or night. So, okay, Trump's rebuilding the wall.
That's right. Wall construction, it had essentially halted under the Biden administration when they canceled a bunch of contracts. However, under the second Trump term on March 15th, the CBP announces a $70 million contract to build a 7-mile stretch of wall in Hidalgo County, Texas. The administration says that this will help seal up these critical gaps in the wall to prevent illegal immigration.
Yeah, the administration says that illegal immigrants can just vanish in the surrounding communities. And with the wall built, that'll funnel immigrants to correct areas where actual U.S. service members and CBP officers can get them.
Absolutely, Kevin.
Okay, so now we have the result, record low crossings.
Yes, well, first, let's talk about record highs. Under the previous administration, illegal border crossings reached a record high of 300,000 per month. Now, for reference, in 2023, the population of the city of Pittsburgh was only 303,000. So under the second Trump administration, it went to a record low. In February, it dropped to just a little under 12,000 crossings per month. Last month in March, it dropped even lower to just a little over 11,000 illegal crossings per month.
Right.
All right, so there you have it, what President Trump's been doing at the border. However, that's not all. He's been doing a lot with the interior as well, Kevin.
Oh, absolutely. So what you see here is that Trump administration is taking people that they have deemed to be members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, the notorious street gang MS-13 members, and removing them from the country using the Alien Enemies Act. Now, this is normally used in wartime, and the courts had to step in and say, no, you cannot use this act to deport people. But here you see these people were deported under it, and they are in El Salvador at CCOT. That's the Terrorist Confinement Center. So they're there, and DHS Secretary Noem, she went there, and then she used that as a means of saying, hey, if a person comes to the United States and they harm Americans and they're illegally here, well, they can end up with the same future as these individuals.
But Kevin, the administration now, it's not just looking at these alleged violent gang members, they're also turning their eye to college students.
Yes, so what you're seeing right here is Columbia University's Khalil Mahmoud. He's a graduate student there. He was arrested by ICE agents. At first, judges said, no, you cannot deport him. They eventually gave the green light. The Trump administration says that people like Khalil Mahmood are directly opposed to American foreign policy interests. And so Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that's grounds for deporting him. Again, he's a person who led the protest encampment at Columbia University. And as we remember, those protests saw Jewish students afraid for their lives and a lot of allegations of anti-Semitism, so that's the Trump administration's means of tackling that.
And this isn't the only case. We're seeing a similar case at Tufts University, as well as all the federal funding freeze. That $2.2 billion funding freeze for Harvard University is ongoing as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn and look at Guantanamo Bay, because that played an interesting role in all of this as well.
Yeah, so this is Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, U.S. base in Cuba, where some Venezuelan illegal immigrants in the United States were sent there. It actually just served as a stopover. They were eventually returned to their home country, Venezuela. But President Trump initially said, ready 30,000 spots at Gitmo. This is a place where the masterminds or the alleged ones of the 9/11 terror attack are held. Here, it's being used for immigration. But those only about 400 migrants ended up being sent to Gitmo, and then it was all cleared. Now it's not being used for that purpose anymore. But at the same time, the American Civil Liberties Union and others sued the administration over the use of it, and they said that this was the first time that they've ever seen that used for that purpose.
And so as a result of all of this, as well as other actions, by day 50, only halfway through our 100 days, 32,000 plus ICE arrests, Kevin.
Yes, so ICE enforcement and removal operations agents, they have arrested 32,000 people, again, by day 50, and these are people that are deemed to be illegally in the country. Again, Trump focusing on the criminal element. And to give you an idea of that number, that's about 7 times faster than the last fiscal year of the Biden administration. So Trump is making a big point of removing them. And again, this 32,000 number by day 50, those are at-large arrests. This means that ICE agents are going into their workplace, they're arresting these criminal illegal immigrants in public and so forth. It's not just a handoff at jails.
That's right, Kevin, and there you have it. President Donald Trump, he has taken a hardline stance on illegal immigration and the border crisis in his first 100 days back in office. This was a big campaign trail promise.
Yes, to recap, sealing up the border and removing people unauthorized to be in this country from the interior, and we're going to have more coverage on Trump's first 100 days for you soon.
All right, so let's stay on the topic of the border and illegal immigration. We're going to bring another panel on now. Let's bring on Andrew Arthur, fellow in law and policy with the Center for Immigration Studies and former immigration judge, and Javier Palomares, founder and CEO of the U.S. Hispanic Business Council. He's also a former advisor to the Obama and McCain campaigns. Andrew, Javier, great having you both on today. Let's start with what we just heard there, what me and my colleague Kevin were talking about there, that memo that the president signed, which essentially gave the Roosevelt Reservation to the DOD as this buffer zone along the border. Javier, let's start with you. How would you rate the president's speed in combating the border crisis in the past 100 days?
You know, I think he's had a lot of effort. You know, I tend to focus on 3 basic areas when I'm looking at the 100 days. You know, executive orders comes to mind. He's had over 124 executive orders, more than any president. You know, he's chosen executive orders kind of as opposed to receiving counsel or taking counsel from cabinet members or advisors. He's circumventing the congressional approval process. And I certainly see kind of the strategy behind that, right? He's a man that wants to get things done. He's in a rush, and he wants to you know, enact his policies and his vision as quickly as possible. With all that said, only 5 bills have actually passed into law. And so there's the rhetoric and everything we see in the media, and then there's the reality of what's actually happening. I think there's a lot yet to see. You know, I don't think it's as doom and gloom as some others in my Democratic Party believe it is. I think there's hope yet. But, you know, it remains to be seen. There's some approval stuff that's going on, but we can talk about that in a bit.
Andrew, I'll give you a moment to respond and to just give your initial analysis of the president's performance on the border.
Well, as a person who has to report daily about what the president's doing on the border and on immigration, I could tell you, I almost wish he'd slow down, because these orders, the decisions that they're making, the arrest, the sealing of the border, all of these things are coming at a lightning pace. Donald Trump took office knowing that as soon as he took his hand off the Bible, he was a lame duck, and he only has 4 years to accomplish the promises that he made on the campaign trail, particularly with respect to the border, particularly with respect to criminal aliens in the United States, and particularly with respect to some high-profile criminal organizations, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. And he's definitely taken some very strong stances on that, which has put him at odds with a number of federal district court judges. But there's no doubt that he's delivering on what he said. So, things thus far are pretty good.
So let's talk about the legality of some of the actions he's taken here. Javier, some legal analysts are saying that with this memo in relation to the Roosevelt Reservation, the president is trying to skirt a law here that prohibits the military from conducting law enforcement. Is this a concern to you?
I mean, it is, to the extent that, to the point that Andrew made, that he's constantly going to get challenged. He's a man on a mission. I see the rationale behind his moves. When you look at immigration overall, including the border, despite the harsh rhetoric and the salacious headlines on mass deportations and the like, consider that he's only deported about 140 people. That's less than Biden or Obama deported in their first 100 days. And to that end, those are mostly criminals, which I am completely behind. And so, again, I think that you have to parse out what you're hearing in terms of the media and the rhetoric and look at the facts. I agree that, he's doing things in a very unconventional manner. He campaigned on that. He's living up to that promise of taking action. I think it remains to be seen just how far his agenda will go. I can tell you that there is one law in particular that we were very supportive of, and we got both Republican and Democrats on both sides of the aisle to play along with this, and that was the Laken-Riley Act, which affords the faster deportation of illegal criminals. It's these types of things that I focus on. It's the meat and potatoes. There's the rhetoric, there's the media, and there's what he's actually accomplishing. And I think that in and of itself is good, despite what appears to be a climbing disapproval rate right now in its first 100 days.
Before we go to Andrew, Javier, go deeper for us on this Laken-Riley Act, because of course, I think anyone will agree that was a devastating case. So sad. What does this act tell the American people? What kind of message does President Donald Trump send to foreigners as well with that act?
I have to tell you that I was 1,000% behind the Laken-Riley Act, and we worked with Republicans like Juan Ciscomani and Bernie Moreno and Ted Cruz, and as a known Democrat, they were more than willing to hear us out. This was unanimously, I think, amongst the people I was talking to, an approach that everyone approved of. It's the right kind of law. It gets at the issue. I was delighted at the lightning speed in which it happened. And it was part of a broader strategy that instead of doing some huge kind of larger reform, they started to take the issues one at a time and focusing almost surgically on the issues that were triaged and managed and effectively, handled. Laken-Riley is an example of that. They didn't try to do some sweeping reform and bundle everything into it. Instead, they said, hey, let's look at the most critical issues and where can we enact, rules, regulations, and laws that are useful, that are common sense, that are going to get uniform support. Laken-Riley is an example of that. I'd love to see more of that, frankly, than, some comprehensive approach that we know has not worked before, either under an administration that was Republican or Democrat. The huge, sweeping, comprehensive approach is just too difficult. I love the way in which they're approaching this. It's much more like a business. You triage the issues, you take them one at a time, you're surgical about it, and you're fast. And I got to agree, Laken-Riley is an example of what could happen with this president in the White House.
Andrew, your response.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with Javier more. I mean, if you look at what the Biden administration was doing, the Biden administration deliberately didn't take into custody criminal aliens who had committed crimes. In fact, they got sued by the states of Texas and Louisiana. That case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court basically gave the Biden administration a blank check not to arrest criminal aliens in the United States because it found that those states didn't have standing to challenge the non-arrest of anybody. Fast forward to the Lake and Riley Act. It empowers states' attorneys general to sue this administration or any future administration when it fails to take criminal aliens off the streets, to detain them and to remove them from the United States. That's absolutely key. Javier and I could disagree about, various immigration policies, but I think that what 95% of the American population agrees on is that if you're here illegally and you've committed a crime, if you've harmed a United States citizen or you've harmed a green card holder, you need to leave. You've given up your right to live in this country and you need to go. But you actually did make a very important point earlier about the Roosevelt Reservation. That's a strip of land that the federal government has retained for itself ever since the Teddy Roosevelt administration. That's what it's named for. Between Mexico and the United States. That's an area that we can operate in. For decades, that was controlled by the Department of the Interior. They sent rangers out there into often hostile territory. That has now been ceded, at least on a test basis, in New Mexico to the Department of Defense. Now, those park rangers, and Chris Egley is a prime example, killed by smugglers more than a decade ago, they go into that very unprotected. When you've got U.S. Marines in battle rattle, the sort that I saw when I was down in San Diego 3 weeks ago, they're not going to stand by while people smuggle drugs into the United States. Now, again, their ability to arrest people is extremely limited. I know that Javier would agree with me on that. But their ability to be a show of force, to be a show of deterrence, to tell the smugglers it's a new day, fentanyl can't pour into this country anymore, that's a game changer.
And Andrew, along these lines, President Trump, he's also saying that he's looking into the legality of sending U.S. citizens who have committed violent crimes to foreign prisons, most notably here, El Salvador. Is there a legal pathway to that?
No, not really. Under United States law, we don't have the ability to exile U.S. citizens. I certainly understand the instinct behind the president's statements. People in the United States are frustrated with crime. I left Baltimore, Maryland. I can tell you all about crime. We take the next hour. Upset with lawlessness, on college campuses and on our streets. And the president ran promising to end that. Now, one of my rules of thumb, and I can't even remember who said it first, always take Donald Trump seriously, but don't always take him literally. We have plenty of jail space in the United States to hold our homegrown criminals. It's not going to be necessary for us to send those people abroad. And besides, the two other branches, the legislative and the judicial branch, might have something to say about that. But when it comes to finding countries like El Salvador and others that are willing to take aliens that we don't have the ability to remove back to their home countries, particularly, criminal aliens, and Tren de Aragua is a well-oiled criminal machine. That really is a game changer because we no longer have to countenance their presence here in the United States. We can move them to another place that can then move them back home.
All right, on that point, here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt last week speaking on this topic and mentioning what she called these activist judges. Take a listen.
And we also need rogue district court judges to stop acting as judicial activists, trying to block the administration from deporting illegal criminals from our nation's interior. The American public elected the president to do this, and he's following through with that promise.
Javier, your reaction to that, as well as Andrew's point earlier.
The young woman's got a job to do, and I completely understand. The fact of the matter is, if you look at this president's first 100 days, there are some definite challenging areas. I think certainly the media has taken a particular look at his first 100 days. He's got an approval rating that was at 47% when he first got into office. It's dropped down to 41%. He's got a disapproval rate that was at 52% when he first took over. It's risen by 7 points up to 59%. In both cases, Obama and Biden outdid him. That's fair. But Obama and Biden did not have the activity that this president has had. This guy's on a mission. He is looking to make, a statement. He's done some things that, as a Democrat, I have to say I fully support. I believe that there is a lot of good that's potentially here. I think as a nation and certainly as a business association, we're taking a breath. We're taking a look. There's, again, the media coverage. There's the salaciousness of everything that's going on. Some would say he's gone too far in some areas. Some would say he's not gone far enough. The fact of the matter is that as a business association, we look at the real issues, the real impact, what's actually happening. And oftentimes what you see in the media, what gets reported and what's actually happening is quite different. Overall, I see a president that is sticking to his agenda, that is stubbornly looking at it from a very different perspective, as uncomfortable as that might be. I think there's been some real successes there. And if they can zero in on how to get more of the good things done, he campaigned on, bringing prices down for the average American family, on lessening regulation for the American business community, on making America great again by bringing manufacturing back. If he can focus on those things and continue to hone in on how to get that part of the agenda done, I think we're going to have a great presidency here. The first 100 days, if you look at just approvals and disapprovals, his disapproval rate is concerning. But then again, look at the agenda this man has taken on. Look at the actions he's taken on his own volition. And so he's invited that disapproval, and he is very comfortably plowing forward. And I have to admit, I respect that. We'll see what happens in the next 100 days, and in the next 3 years for that matter. But I see some bright spots here. I really do.
So, Andrew, to the point of the president just hammering, just really going for it and trying to get his agenda accomplished, we're seeing his administration starting to arrest these judges that are allegedly obstructing ICE deportation efforts. Yesterday, Press Secretary Leavitt, she didn't rule out arresting a Supreme Court judge. So as the Trump administration makes these arrests and makes these comments, do you see any concern for the potential politicization of the judicial branch, or could it be the opposite here?
Yeah, no, and it's important to put Ms. Leavitt's statements into context and to talk about the two judges in question. One of the judges, the state court judge in New Mexico, actually had a group of individuals living with him who were in some way, or at least one of them was affiliated with Tren de Aragua. When that individual was arrested, that judge took the guy's phone, broke it, and hid the pieces that he had broken. That's obstruction of justice. With respect to the judge in Wisconsin, she knew that ICE was there with FBI agents to arrest an individual who had illegally re-entered the United States, came once and was deported, came back in, and then was, on trial for assaulting people. He hit one person 30 times. And that judge allowed that individual to sneak out the back door of her courtroom in order to allow him to escape ICE enforcement. Immigration enforcement is a federal issue. I can understand that state court judges and state legislators have, strong feelings about it. But that is not reason to, engage in what is criminal activity under federal law. Now, I don't think Donald Trump is going to go arresting Elena Kagan or John Roberts, unless, of course, they allow somebody to sneak out the back door of their courtroom. I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, you need to put all of these things into context. What he has done, what happened in the case of those two judges, those are criminal actions. And quite frankly, I wore a black robe. It didn't make me immune from prosecution. It was supposed to remind me of my fidelity to the law. And so, that's not acceptable. With respect to the other cases that are going on, district court judges, a lot of them don't have any background in this. They have strong feelings. They're going to rule. That's why we have courts of appeal. That's why we have a Supreme Court.
Okay, so a key term that we keep hearing with these deportation plans is due process. And of course, we've been hearing that with the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So here's Senator Chris Van Hollen speaking about that after his earlier visit to Abrego Garcia in El Salvador. Take a look.
This should not be an issue for Republicans or Democrats. This is an issue for every American who cares about our Constitution, who cares about personal liberty, who cares about due process, and who cares about what makes America so different, which is adherence to all of those things. This is an American issue.
Okay, so Vice President J.D. Vance, he has said that due process was followed in this case. Andrew, break this down really quickly for us. What is the federal government really obligated to provide here exactly?
Well, in this, it's a very complicated case. Mr. Abrego Garcia is accused of being an MS-13 member. On that basis, one immigration judge refused to grant him bond, finding he was a danger to the community. The case then went to another immigration judge who issued probably one of the more interesting decisions I've ever read, and I've read thousands of them, granting this individual something called withholding of removal. He's under a final order of removal, but his removal is withheld from one country, and the government contends that that is El Salvador and that they removed him in error. The problem is that he's been sent back to El Salvador, his home country. And the country of El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, has put him into a jail there, probably because they think he's an MS-13 member too. And the Nayib Bukele government of El Salvador is currently at war with MS-13. So in essence, if you go back to the Brittany Griner situation where a female basketball player was in jail in Russia, we had to engage in deep diplomatic negotiations to get a U.S. citizen out of a Russian jail. In the Maryland District Court, the judge ordered the government to successfully engage in such diplomacy and to do so on a very tight time frame, get Mr. Abrego Garcia back by April 7th. I have a feeling that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is going to be coming home, that we're going to find a lot more out about Abrego Garcia, and that Chris Van Hollen may not want to be hanging around with him much after that. But I don't know. And the evidence is out there. We need to see what's going on. There are definitely allegations on both sides. And it's important to note Abrego Garcia denies that he's an MS-13 member. So stay tuned. We'll find out what's going on with that. But mistakes happen in government. Unfortunately, this is one that affects an individual. But, people have a lot of facts on both sides of the argument. We'll see how it comes out.
And Javier, building off of what Andrew is saying there, plaintiffs in a lot of these cases, they're saying things like they received deportation notices that were written in English when they only spoke Spanish, or there wasn't enough information on how to really contest these deportation orders. Javier, we've also spoken before about the impact of this deportation plan on industries like agriculture and hospitality. Tell us more about what you're hearing firsthand from these communities.
Well, we are hearing firsthand about the fear and trepidation. As you know, I work with the agricultural sector, the hospitality sector, manufacturing, et cetera. It is very concerning, and it's really just the fear factor. Again, let's look at the facts. Despite all of the coverage and all the salacious, narrative and rhetoric that's been built around the mass deportations, they've deported a grand total of a little less than 140,000 people, less than Obama had in his first 100 days, less than Biden had in his first 100 days. I agree with the judge. The vast majority of these were known criminals or people who were here to do us harm. Completely agree with that. Are there going to be some glitches, some hiccups? Of course. Anything this rapid, anything this complicated, anything this massive, there's going to be the occasional, where we got it wrong. I think we need to focus on the intent of the law and get behind it as a nation. I, for one, have been talking about and would love for the president to enact the Trump visa, the temporary residence for undocumented migrant professionals to afford, some help for critical industries like agriculture, where 83% of the workers are actually of immigrant background, like manufacturing, where 54% of the workers are actually of immigrant background, and even technology. And so I think by focusing again on what the campaign promised, which was to make life better, to make the economy stronger, and lower prices for American families, we need a visa that affords these individuals who we know are here to do well, to work hard, to contribute. The Trump visa, the temporary residence for undocumented migrant professionals, does not afford government benefits to a recipient. It does not afford voting rights to a recipient, nor does it afford citizenship to a recipient. In addition, the recipient has to pay taxes of anywhere from 10 to 20%. These are common sense, quick fixes that we could put into place to alleviate the fear in what is already a bunch of struggling but critical industries, again, like manufacturing, construction, hospitality, and agriculture, and find a way to move forward, again, taking one step at a time, being decisive, getting something done to alleviate the problem and afford, the American economy some semblance of stability so we can move forward. I'm looking forward to having that discussion with the president to highlight how something like the Trump visa could be a fix that is sustainable because it makes sense, and these recipients would actually pay their way because they'd have taxes on their income.
All right, gentlemen, I've got around 1 minute here, so 30 seconds to each of you. Closing statements here. What do you hope to see from the president to ensure a safe border in this presidency and beyond this presidency? Javier, 30 seconds.
I think keep up the heat. He is absolutely focused on deporting and quickly identifying people who are here to do us harm, known criminals. That's exactly the right approach. But balance that with a way to help those who are here to help grow the American economy and pay their way.
And Andrew, final word to you today.
We've already seen a lot of good things happen. In February and March, the backlog of the immigration cases in immigration court actually dropped for the first time in 2008. I think that you're going to have a lot of people who are here illegally, particularly who are criminals, self-deport. They're not going to show up in that 140,000 figure that Javier discussed. But I think we're going to see more of the same. But, keep your eye on Donald Trump. As Javier indicated, he's a man who's tough on immigration, but he may also, start cutting some deals because he has a vision for, what the immigration system should be. And he seems bound and determined to bring it into effect.
Yeah, well, illegal immigration, border crisis, those were huge promises on the campaign trail. And I'm sure, as you both mentioned, a lot more is going to come out of this. Andrew Arthur, Javier Palomares, great having you both on today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, President Donald Trump is heading to Michigan for a rally. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more after this break.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
Thanks for staying with us. President Donald Trump holding a rally in Warren, Michigan today to mark his 100th day back in office. He's also signing an executive order on his way there to give some tariff relief to automakers. And joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. She is at the rally. Iris, good afternoon. Tell us more about this rally and the president's plans in Michigan today.
Good afternoon to you as well, Fiona. So at 6 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, President Trump will be taking the stage right behind us here at Macomb Community College near Warren, Michigan. And this will be his first rally after his inauguration celebration, and is his big rally to celebrate his 100 days in office in his second term. Meanwhile, Macomb County is known as the home to Reagan Democrats, and it's also just a little bit north of Detroit, the Motor City that has really seen the rise and fall of the American auto manufacturing industry. And today we talked to a 25-year UAW member named Brian Pennebecker. He will be speaking at this rally before Trump takes the stage, and he's also been invited to Trump's Rose Garden announcement of his reciprocal tariffs, and has been a rally speaker also since the last campaign we saw them last year. And he told us that he believes that Trump picked this specific place out of all places because it represents a main base for President Trump's support, which is blue-collar working class. Here's what he told us. Watch.
They may not have college degrees, but they get up every day and work hard to support their families. And those are the kind of people Donald Trump is fighting for. We've gone downhill for the last 30 or 40 years. But the Metro Detroit area, it wants to come back. We want some manufacturing jobs back.
Last year, President Trump won Michigan.
We just wanted to help them during this little transition, short term. And during this little, if they can't get parts, you know, it has to do with a very small percentage. If they can't get parts, we didn't want to penalize them. And during, you have a 1-year period, and then they have an extra year. But it's for a very, very small part of the car. Basically, they're paying 25%.
And that was President Trump on his way out of the White House today, talking about an executive order that he is about to sign today to give some tariff relief to the auto industry. The executive order will basically signify a change in which automakers now, if they pay the 25% auto tariffs, they won't have to pay the extra tariffs, for example, on steel and aluminum anymore. So no stacking up of such tariffs on their cars. And it will also phase out tariffs on car parts over the years. And the White House says that's to give these automakers more time to gradually shift the production lines back to the U.S. And President Trump, of course, says he wants to help these companies after talking to the CEOs of them over the past few weeks. I mean, but we know that in Trump's tariff pitch, what main talking point is that he wants to bring jobs back, especially in the auto and manufacturing industry. And today he's, in addition to signing the executive order, he will also come here to really tout his record on jobs and on tariffs, and his vision of really restoring and reassuring these manufacturing jobs, especially like in state Michigan. And Brian Pennebecker told us that while he believes that there are some auto workers or some American people out there who are not really comfortable with the new tariffs, ultimately he believes that people should trust and have patience in what President Trump is doing. Watch. Have you heard from your fellow auto workers or members of the UAW about President Trump's tariffs and its impact? How has it impacted people's lives and families here?
Of course, not everyone understands them. Not everyone, is comfortable with them. But the vast majority of the auto workers support Donald Trump. They trust him. We know that he knows what he's doing.
And on his way here later this afternoon, President Trump will also make a stop at Selfridge Air National Guard Base. He will be joined by Democratic Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. They will be talking about new fighter jets. And, of course, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, or slightly later as Trump is making more stops on his way, we will be seeing President Trump taking the stage right behind us here among his many supporters who are already seated and are still coming into this major rally to mark his 100 days in office. Fiona.
Iris, keep us updated. Thank you. Moving on up north, Canada goes to the polls. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals retained power in the country's election yesterday. NTD's Daniel Monahan breaks down those results.
Though victorious, the Liberal Party could fall short of the 172 seats needed for a majority in the 343-seat House of Commons. With 98% of polls reporting, the Liberals were leading or elected in 167 electoral districts, followed by the Conservatives with 145, and 3 other parties taking 31 seats. Minority governments in Canada rarely last longer than 2.5 years. In a victory speech, Prime Minister Carney said Canada is at a turning point.
Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over.
Carney says Canada is over the shock of what he called the American betrayal, but warned Canadians not to forget the lessons.
When I sit down with President Trump, it will be to discuss the future economic and security relationship between 2 sovereign nations.
Carney promised a firm stance on U.S. tariffs and pledged to invest billions to reduce Canada's economic dependence on its southern neighbor. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre conceded defeat to Carney's Liberals. Despite losing the election, Poilievre says Conservatives have much to celebrate.
We've gained well over 20 seats. We got the highest share of vote our party has received since 1988.
Poilievre says Conservatives will hold the new government to account and propose better alternatives.
We will always put Canada first as we stare down tariffs and other irresponsible threats from President Trump.
And says Conservatives will work with the Prime Minister and all parties with the common goal of defending Canada's interests.
And getting a new trade deal that puts these tariffs behind us while protecting our sovereignty and the Canadian people.
The result capped a notable comeback for the Liberals. They were 20 percentage points behind in the polls in January before former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced he was quitting, and President Trump started proposing tariffs and suggesting Canada should become the 51st American state. Trump's threats ignited a wave of patriotism that swelled support for Carney, a political newcomer who previously led 2 G7 central banks. Carney has emphasized that his experience handling economic issues makes him the best leader to deal with Trump, while Poilievre tapped into concerns about the cost of living, crime, and a housing crisis. Trump, in a social media post on Monday, reiterated his call for Canada to become the 51st state, saying it would greatly benefit both economically and from a security standpoint. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up next, a news report claims Amazon was going to list how much was added to the prices of items as a result of tariffs. See how the White House and Amazon respond after this break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
I didn't ask to lose my mother or to be abused at 5 years old. I didn't ask to be kicked out of my house with nowhere to go. I didn't ask for any of this. But I did ask for help, and Covenant House was there. Thanks to their love and support, and to generous people like you, I got what I needed to take control of my life.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. 1 in 10 young adults will experience homelessness this year. Your gift can help reach them when they need it most.
I didn't ask for my parents and my family to disown me. I didn't ask to end up in a homeless shelter. The beauty of it all is that I found Covenant House.
The need is overwhelming, but your monthly support will make sure no young person is ever turned away. Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today. If there's no Covenant House, where would I be today?
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations. Show them they're loved and not alone. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
911, where's your emergency?
I get shot in my best friend on NTD. Oh my God.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
In today's Business Matters, a major business summit takes place at the White House tomorrow. CEOs and senior executives from NVIDIA, Johnson & Johnson, Hyundai, Toyota, and SoftBank are among the over 20 business leaders scheduled to attend an event highlighting U.S. investments. President Trump will host the Investing in America event, promoting a wide range of investments in sectors like defense, technology, and healthcare. The goal is to encourage companies to expand their manufacturing footprint in the United States. The White House says recent investment pledges from major firms like Taiwan's TSMC and Apple show resounding confidence in the U.S. economy. And last month, South Korea's Hyundai announced a more than $20 billion investment in the U.S., including a nearly $6 billion Hyundai steel plant in Louisiana. Amazon launched a batch of satellites into orbit on Monday. It marks the biggest stride yet in the tech giant's efforts to join a race to blanket the planet in internet connectivity beamed from space. 27 satellites took flight atop an Atlas V rocket from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. And the launch kicks off the first installment for Amazon's project Kuiper, which will eventually use a constellation of 3,200 satellites in its first phase. The effort is poised to compete with Starlink, the network which is offered by Elon Musk's SpaceX. And Amazon is hoping to roll out Project Kuiper fairly quickly, with its first customers using the network later this year. Drug maker Merck has broken ground on a new $1 billion site in Delaware. CEO Robert Davis said the effort will take time, but the payoff could mean stable access to drugs and high-paying jobs in the U.S. Davis explained that this is an opportunity for the U.S. site to provide for the U.S. and European site to provide for Europe. And he said this will reduce risk and increase national security. A news release detailed that the site will have a lab, manufacturing, and warehouse. Ditching artificial dyes early, PepsiCo products are getting ahead of a phase-out. The Health and Human Services Department announced measures this month to remove all petroleum-based synthetic dyes by next year. During a recent earnings call, PepsiCo CEO said the company will lead the transition and will stop using these dyes by the end of the year. He noted that the company's products are safe, but it is anticipating demand for natural ingredients. He said the entire portfolio will move to natural colors or will at least provide a natural color option. Pepsi owns popular snack brands like Lay's, Doritos, and Cheetos. And on Tuesday, UPS said it's going to cut 20,000 jobs this year, which is about 4% of its global workforce. The shipping giant says the move isn't related to tariffs. The cuts are due to increased use of technology and a previously announced plan to trim business with Amazon. Its largest customer, by the way, and in January, UPS announced a glide-down plan to cut its Amazon business in half by the middle of next year. The company said it's going to close 73 U.S. buildings by the end of June as part of the plan. And UPS leaders are also expecting to use more automation in the company's facilities, with 400 facilities becoming partially, if not fully, automated. Meanwhile, General Motors is recalling more than 721,000 trucks and SUVs worldwide, and this is over possible engine defects. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened an investigation after about 40 complaints for engine failures. While the investigation continues, GM has issued a voluntary recall for repairs or replacements. It affects vehicles with 6.2-liter V8 engines from the 2021 through 2024 model years. They include the Chevy Silverado 1500, Tahoe and Suburban, the GMC Sierra 1500, Yukon and Yukon XL, and the Cadillac Escalade and Escalade ESV. And soda maker Coca-Cola has reported better than expected quarterly profits and said it expects the impact of tariffs to be manageable. Rival PepsiCo, on the other hand, lowered its full-year earnings expectations because of tariffs. Both are facing 25% tariffs on aluminum, which are used for their cans. Coke's CFO John Murphy said tariffs could impact its costs and consumer sentiment. But Murphy said Coke has numerous ways to manage the impact. For example, in the past, it noted it could rely more heavily on glass and plastic bottles. Coke's unit case volumes grew in the first quarter. This was led by higher demand in China, India, and Brazil. Coca-Cola Zero Sugar was a standout with case volumes up 14%. French car parts supplier Valeo said that 90% of the products it produces in Mexico and imports into the U.S. are now compliant with the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. So goods complying with the trade deal are excluded from Trump's duties. In one example of how Valeo is complying, its CEO said it was moving plastic molds used to produce car parts from China to other parts of the world, particularly Mexico and the U.S. The company also accelerated its restructuring and savings program, which it expects will generate total savings of $171 million in 2025. Now, fear over tariffs have fueled imports, with businesses stockpiling. The U.S. goods trade deficit rose to a record high in March, dragging down GDP. The Commerce Department's Census Bureau reported that the goods trade gap widened by nearly 10% to $162 billion. Economists estimate that this could have sliced as much as 2 percentage points from GDP last quarter. Economic uncertainty is turning up in other reports as well. Consumer confidence plunged to a near 5-year low in April, while job openings last month decreased to the lowest level since last September. Adidas warns of possible price increases as the company hesitates to issue a positive sales forecast in the face of the current economy. Here's more.
Adidas warned about higher U.S. import tariffs and uncertainty around trade on Tuesday. The German sportswear giant said it was clouding its forecast and making it difficult to plan. CEO Bjorn Gulden said the company would have hiked its revenue and profit guidance for this year after strong first quarter results. But tariff uncertainty meant it decided to hold back. Adidas expects the blanket increase in US tariffs to eventually cause price increases across all its products. However, it said it was currently impossible to quantify those or to establish the likely impact on US consumer demand. Golden added Adidas has already reduced exports of China-made goods to the US to a minimum. He said it is still somewhat exposed to much higher US tariffs on Chinese goods. Unexpectedly high US tariffs on Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and Indonesia came as a surprise to sportswear brands, although they were paused until July. The companies make most of their sneakers and clothing there. Adidas said it would strive to ensure US retail partners and consumers get products at the best possible price. It further said it would try to compensate for uncertainty in the US by boosting its performance in the rest of the world. First quarter sales rose 14% in Europe and 13% in Greater China and were up just over a quarter in Latin America. Sales in North America increased just 3%, which Adidas said was due to the phase-out of its Yeezy sneaker line. Adidas stuck to its full-year guidance but warned uncertainties could put negative pressure on this later in the year.
Now, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Starbucks' new drink scheduling system has shaved 2 minutes off the average time to make a drink ordered inside cafes. And that was during testing at dozens of locations. So the company says 3/4 of orders during the busiest times at the test cafes were finished in 4 minutes or less. Currently, baristas handle orders as they come in. The aim of the new order scheduling algorithm is designed to determine sequencing across cafe counters, drive-thrus, and apps. Starbucks Chief Technology Officer says it has room to grow more complex over time. The algorithm is not based on artificial intelligence. The coffee giant plans to soon expand the technology to hundreds of other locations. A partner-turned-plaintiff, American Airlines is suing its former Northeast Alliance partner JetBlue after their alliance collapsed. Here's the story.
From the same side to opposing sides, American Airlines is suing JetBlue after partnership talks collapsed. In 2020, the carriers announced the Northeast Alliance. It allowed the two airlines to coordinate flights and share revenue. American was hoping the partnership would strengthen its network and loyalty program. But last November, an appeals court upheld a 2023 ruling that said the alliance violated antitrust law. The lawsuit states that American is now trying to recover more than $1 million that American says JetBlue owes it after unwinding the partnership. In response to the lawsuit, JetBlue said it has been working with American to wind down the alliance and will review the complaint. JetBlue said it couldn't comment further on the pending litigation. Back in February, JetBlue said it was in talks with multiple airlines to establish a partnership. American says it's now focusing on its New York and Boston markets.
Gilead Sciences has agreed to pay $202 million to settle a whistleblower lawsuit over alleged kickbacks. The settlement resolved charges that Gilead violated federal law by defrauding Medicare, Medicaid, and other programs into paying for drugs prescribed by doctors involved in Gilead's promotional speaker programs. So Gilead said it settled to avoid the cost and distraction of potential litigation. The California-based company set aside money for the settlement in last year's fourth quarter. The Gilead case was originally filed in 2016 by a doctor who treats patients diagnosed with HIV and AIDS. Now, the White House is taking an assertive stance against Amazon. Today, during a press briefing, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to a news report claiming that Amazon was going to list how much is added to the prices of tariffs on items as a result. Amazon quickly denied the claims, but said it had considered the idea for a separate site. NTD's Sean Marshall has the details.
Take this since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon.
The White House and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt made a serious point on Tuesday that the Trump administration will not tolerate any actions from companies that appear to be siding with China or politically motivated propaganda. Punchbowl News first reported that Amazon will soon display how much an item is with the addition of tariffs, right next to the product's total price. Amazon quickly denied the claims right after the White House press briefing. Amazon shared their official statement with NTD. The team that runs our ultra-low-cost Amazon Hall store considered the idea of listing import charges on certain products. This was never approved and is not going to happen. Amazon Hall is a spin-off website that sells items below $20. It's basically Amazon's version of Chinese online shopping site Temu, and is still in a beta phase of operations. Temu itself has introduced a new import charge that is displayed at checkout. Temu sources most of their products from China.
Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Levitt was referring to a Reuters report from 2021 about an alleged partnership between Amazon and a Chinese propaganda arm that censored user reviews on its Chinese website for Chinese leader Xi Jinping's speeches and writings. Amazon donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund and is producing a documentary focused on First Lady Melania Trump. Trump recently praised Bezos, telling The Atlantic in an interview published Monday, he's 100%, he's been great. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Royal Caribbean raised its annual profit forecast, benefiting from strong bookings for its high-end itinerary offerings as well as easing fuel costs. The company's CEO said that vacation spend continues to grow, and Royal Caribbean's strong booking trends and disciplined cost management are among the factors that should leave it in a good position. So growing interest in high-end leisure travel among consumers has boosted the cruise industry, with bookings surpassing historical levels in the recent past. Royal Caribbean witnessed record bookings during the wave season, the period from January to March when operators offer exclusive cruise deals and packages despite its consecutive hikes in ticket prices. And now on to markets. U.S. stocks closed higher today, and this is despite choppy trading as investors weighed corporate earnings as well as mixed economic data and evolving trade policies. Treasury Secretary Bessent warned that China could lose up to around 10 million jobs due to tariffs, while progress with Japan and India was noted. Trump signed an order easing auto tariffs temporarily, but companies like GM still cut its guidance, and consumer confidence fell as well amid the trade deficit widening, reflecting growing tariff impacts. Still, the S&P 500 extended its winning streak to 6 days now, led by strong results by Honeywell, Sherwin-Williams, and Coca-Cola. And that's it today on Business Matters. Today is President Trump's first 100 days, a closer look at Doge. What has been the department done to improve efficiency, and what happens next after the break?
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Stay tuned to get a free month of home warranty protection. Tired of searching for contractors when your home appliances and systems break down, only to leave you stuck with a huge repair bill and shoddy repairs? Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and appliance breakdowns could cost thousands.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they could do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way.
I would recommend anyone who is listening to this to call Choice Home Warranty up. It eliminates anxiety, frustration, and it saves you money.
Don't let an appliance or home system break the bank, leaving you stressed. Call Choice Home Warranty before that happens and get your first month free. Plus, call in the next 5 minutes and we'll give you free limited roof leak coverage. That's a $70 value, free. Just call now.
No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. I trust Choice Home Warranty with my home, and you should too.
Year after year, Choice Home Warranty is recognized as the nation's top home warranty and has thousands of 5-star reviews from real homeowners. Experience real budget protection and call Choice Home Warranty now.
Stop throwing money down the toilet chasing contractors. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Don't wait another minute. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. That's over $100 in savings. This offer won't last long. Call now to lock in your rate and save big. Call 800-216-9114. 800-216-9114.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjion Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
And joining us now to discuss Trump's first 100 days is economist Lydia Mashburn-Newman. She's the managing director of monetary economics at the American Institute for Economic Research. Also joining us is Daniel Lakai, a chief economist at Treasury's Hedge Fund and author of Freedom or Equality. So first of all, good afternoon to you both. I just want to focus on one specific aspect here of the past 3 months, and that is his tariffs. So Trump is often saying that he was elected on the economy, but we've seen significant fear perhaps and worry maybe in response to his tariffs. Lydia, if I may, I'll start with you. What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, so the tariffs are definitely causing a great deal of uncertainty. We've seen this in the stock market. We've also seen this among business owners, business leaders, both large companies as well as small companies. You're also seeing some detraction among consumer sentiment. A lot of the survey data, what's known as the soft data, is showing that the outlook that many Americans are starting to have on the economy is turning a little bit more south, and much of that is in response to the tariff policies. So there's definitely some concern out there.
So Daniel, what do you think? Is Trump helping the economy right now?
Well, Trump is helping the economy, but we need to understand where the economy was heading to. After the disastrous policies of the past 4 years, the economy was heading into an absolute disaster. The trade deficit was completely unsustainable. The fiscal deficit was completely unsustainable. The economy was already weakening. Consumer sentiment was already coming down. All those factors have been inherited. Now, it is obvious that that tariffs may create some kind of concern because it's a negotiation, and it always leads to certain levels of questions of how will this end. However, I think that the reason why Trump was elected was precisely to take action on what was already a very challenging environment for the U.S. economy in terms of trade. And I think that the progress that is being achieved in terms of those negotiations is already reflected in the stock market and probably will reflect also on consumer sentiment in the future. The headlines from the mainstream media don't help either. Everybody seems to be talking way too much about the negatives and very little about the positives.
Lydia, what are your thoughts? Is the U.S. economy under the Trump administration headed in the right direction?
I think there have been a number of positive aspects, some things that, not to take us away from tariffs too much, but a lot of the work related to deregulation is a key component in fostering business development and consumer confidence. And a number of things that came out of Doge, where they were showcasing some areas where we could rein in some spending in government. On the tariff side, I think a lot of the goals have been really laudable, trying to restore manufacturing and trying to restore some competitiveness in the US. But there definitely are some concerns about how this is playing out as a negotiating tactic that can be valuable, at least from Trump's perspective. But we're also looking at a complete retooling. And if Trump's goals are to bring manufacturing back to the United States, that's something that takes time, not months, but years. And so this shift in the way that the economy is meant to be run, according to Trump, I think that we're maybe getting a little out over our skis, and we'd like to see a little bit more on the tax reform front, making permanent the 2016 tax cuts, also more advancements on the deregulatory front. These are things that would help spur and foster that internal domestic production. And so I think we need to be really mindful of what some of the short-term and medium-term costs of this shift and what the tariffs are doing, especially among global trade relations, but also among Main Street and small businesses, where a lot of our supply chains are global, even among our small business owners. So I think we need to be really cautious about how these things get implemented. And I'm really curious to see how some of the negotiations play out, especially with our larger trading partners like Japan, potential with India, as well as the EU.
Okay, we have to talk about markets. I actually have a clip here with me. Let me get your guys' reaction on a reporter asking Trump about markets. Watch.
Do you think the markets are adjusting to your tariff policy?
So when you look at what's happening, I think so. I said there'd be a transition. People haven't understood it. Now they're starting to understand it.
So you heard it from Trump there. Daniel, what do you think?
Well, we've gone from excessive optimism to excessive pessimism, and now a little bit of, coming back to reality. If we think about what happened, particularly in the past 6 months, it was a very unhealthy increase in valuations of companies that came fundamentally from multiple expansion. Not just in the United States. We saw, for example, how German stocks went to all-time highs despite a completely stagnant economy and despite a destructive environment in terms of earnings. So what I think that is happening right now is that the market is starting to price in what the trade impact will be of the tariff negotiations, but it's also pricing in a more realistic approach relative to valuations, considering the earnings season. I think that at least what we have so far is an earnings season that is showing surprise and positive surprise, both in sales and in earnings. And in terms of growth, very, very positive. And if we think about guidance, that's where there is a little bit more of a challenge. Companies are being a little bit more prudent about guidance because the outcome of negotiations on tariffs is something that is likely to affect their earnings quite significantly. But so far, the guidance is not negative. Nobody is talking about a recessionary environment, more of a prudent approach to guidance.
So Lydia, since Trump's so-called Liberation Day, we've seen a lot of volatility in U.S. markets, and President Trump used the word transition. What does he mean by that?
Yeah, so he seems to be referring to, he's looking at changing sort of the whole makeup of our global trading system. And so there are obviously disruptions if you go about that type of level of change, given how integrated global markets are. And so we did see some turmoil in the stock market, but I would agree that some of that was due to, we had been at very high highs. Some of that was sort of getting out at the top in some areas. But then we've continued to see this uncertainty. But in truth, we're really only at levels that we saw just last year. So I do think there's some caution to be had in that, and how much turmoil we've seen in the stock market itself. But on the factor of uncertainty and transitions, if these policies really are geared toward completely changing the way in which we do business, especially in trying to bring back manufacturing jobs, there is a cost to that transition. And I think that that requires time, retooling. There's a level of uncertainty. And then you have a number of businesses, for example, example, the automakers who are trying to get some reprieve from these things. And I think we need to be really careful. The more we have businesses and even countries trying to come in and get special treatment, we're going to move from a globalized, mostly free trade, but not perfectly free trade economy to one that is built more on the principles of mercantilism, which would be old-fashioned word for creating special interests. And I think we need to be really mindful that those types of transition costs, those types of changes would be bad for the overall health of the U.S. economy and our longer-term outlook.
Okay, on that point, let's talk about China. So Daniel, President Trump has argued that countries like China have benefited from unfair trade practices. Do you think his tariffs, as a tool, are they addressing these issues effectively?
Well, we've learned the hard way, unfortunately. The diplomatic approach has not worked. In the first administration, the first Trump administration, we saw how going through the diplomatic level ended up with no improvement, actually, with both China and the European Union increasing their non-tariff barriers dramatically. Therefore, I think that obviously the current negotiation in an open forum with aggressive words at some point certainly creates some uncertainty. But I think that there's no other option. And I think that there's no other option because it's been a long time since the United States has seen the benefits of the current situation. For a while, the United States was getting cheap products and ample supply of all sorts of very, very affordable products. But the improvement in prices has come at a very high cost to manufacturing, has been a very high cost to actually free trade when there's actually no free trade whatsoever. There's ban on US companies, there's intellectual property theft, there's numerous things that go way beyond what is a tariff negotiation. Therefore, I think that this has to be improved, and I concur completely with what my colleague said just a moment ago. This has to be a comprehensive negotiation that leads to an opening of non-tariff barriers from the rest of the world and an improvement in global trade, not to a special favor treatment to certain sectors close to the heart of policymakers.
Right, so on this issue, I actually have another clip, and I liked your guys' reaction on this. Watch.
But we've been ripped off for many, many years. The United States has been ripped off like no country probably in the history of the world has been ripped off for 45, 50 years. And countries have gotten rich by doing that with the United States. We've taken care of it.
Lydia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, those are some very serious concerns, as we were just talking about, related to mostly the non-tariff barriers. There are things related to your subsidization, things that China subsidizing its certain industries. Japan does the same, especially with its auto manufacturing, and preventing our cars from going over there, not necessarily through tariffs, but through what they term their safety regulations. And so I think that this is it's a very real concern, and part of what drove Trump to the White House is that, especially among sort of your normal average American, you do see that there have been harms from globalization that has been somewhat, in some people's view, less than mutual in terms of benefits. And you do have some very serious concerns when it comes to China, more geopolitical concerns. You have issues where we don't have the ability to own companies outright over there. You still have to have a 51% stake from a Chinese owner, and a lot of challenges, as was just mentioned, about IP, where our intellectual property is sometimes taken, adapted, and essentially used without any compensation. So there are some real concerns, and I think that especially people who are more maybe on the free trade side of things have maybe not been as helpful in discussing this by not acknowledging that those are real costs and consequences when you're dealing with a trade partner that isn't necessarily playing fairly. But the solution isn't always more tariffs. If it's a negotiating tactic that lowers these non-tariff barriers, I think that would be a positive outcome. But there are other things that we can do domestically to help spur and improve our own competitive advantages. And I'd like to see us doing more on that end as well, because I don't think it's enough for us to just be like, hey, we think you've been a bad actor and we're going to try to be punitive. Those negotiations may yield some positive outcomes, but we need to make sure we continue to provide a competitive environment here at home. And that's something that's left off the table. A lot of our manufacturing left because of our rules and regulations, and it went to find cheaper labor elsewhere throughout the globe.
Yeah, okay, so we just have a bit of time left, maybe 30 seconds. And Daniel, I would like you to have the final thought here.
Well, I think it's a very simple issue. We have been told for many years that we were living in a free trade world, and it wasn't the case. In fact, the reality is that tariffs are the norm all over the world, and that trade barriers are also the norm. And those things have massively impacted negatively the United States, because most countries were trying to protect their industries against US companies and at the same time subsidizing politically favored countries. So ultimately, I think it's very important to conduct these negotiations wisely, but I also concur with my colleague. It is not the only thing that needs to be done. We need better taxation. The United States also needs to continue with the deregulation process, and with lower regulation, improvement in the administrative burdens and improvement in the taxation process, then things can come back rather quickly.
Well, all right. Great conversation today. Once again, thank you very much, Daniel, Lydia.
An absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
And now President Trump arrived in Michigan this afternoon. He's now speaking at the Selfridge Air National Base Guard. And let's take a look.
Done a great job. But I want to thank all of the people that I just mentioned, but in particular, when I look at the House members, they have been calling me all the time. We got to get it done. And they worked along with Gretchen and some others. And you're going to be very happy with what I have to say right now. I also want to thank Michigan's tremendous Republican delegation, the whole delegation, the whole state, because they're back in Washington and they're helping our congressman, and they're helping us get the votes that we need, because I think if we get it, we have the biggest tax cut in history, and if we don't get it, you have the biggest tax increase. And for that, I will blame the Democrats, because we probably won't get any votes from Democrats, not for any reason other than we're Republicans, and the Democrats tend not to vote anytime we vote. The whole thing is so crazy. But it'll be the biggest tax increase in history if we don't get it. And that's why the Republicans can do it, but they have to stick together. And I think they are, from what I understand, really sticking together. I want to thank also Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and John Thune, Leader John Thune. They have been working together, and with the senators and the Congress, men and women, and I think they've got something that's really, it's big league, and it's very important. The biggest bill ever, if we get it done, and I think we will. For decades, Selfridge Air National Guard Base has stood as a crucial pillar of North American air defense, just 20 miles north of Detroit, where you're going to have a lot of car factories opening very soon, by the way, I might add, with access to the largest military airspace complex east of the Mississippi. Selfridge is tightly integrated with the National All-Domain Warfighting Center. This airfield saw its first military takeoff all the way back in 1917. Can you believe that? Wow, wouldn't that have been a shame to close this great history for something else that wouldn't be as good? The Tuskegee Airmen trained here during World War II, and generations of Michigan patriots have served here with great distinction. Unfortunately, that proud legacy was put at risk by the retirement of the key aircraft based here, in particular the A-10 Thunderbolt II Warthog, which I hear is an incredible plane. It's too bad. It's a long time it's been up there. I said, why don't we save it? I actually said that last time, and we did save it. I said that in my last term, and we did save it, but now it's coming to an end. But I hear the Warthog is incredible. And We have support aircraft and also the KC-135 strata tankers. In recent years, many in Michigan have feared for the future of the base. They've been calling everybody, but the only one that mattered was Trump. They called Trump and we got it done, which represents $850 million in economic impact across the state of Michigan, and probably it could be much more than that as we expand it out, and creates thousands and thousands of good and important jobs, both in the military and civilian jobs. So Gretchen, that's a big economic, you're not going to have too many economic development jobs like that. It's great. But today I've come in person to lay to rest any doubts about Selfridge's future and the vital role it'll play in our national defense. As Commander-in-Chief, I'm proud to announce that very soon we will replace the retiring A-10 Warthogs with 21 brand new F-15EX Eagle II fighter jets, the best in the world, and fresh off the line. Brand new. And they have an expression, you know what that means, fresh off the line. That means they are brand new. They've never been anywhere. This is where they're going to be for a long time. And I saw one of them, it flew over my head, and I said, what the hell is that? That plane has serious power. So this is the best there is anywhere in the world, the F-15EX Eagle II. This will keep Selfridge at the cutting edge of Northern American air power. My administration will also continue with plans to replace the outgoing KC-135s and KC-46 Pegasus aircraft to continue that important refueling mission. And they'll be restocked with brand new top-of-the-line refuelers. For generations, the men and women of Selfridge have always been here, and they've always been for us. Whether you're Republican or you're Democrat, they've always been for us. They've been for America. And under the Trump administration, we're going to be there for you. The previous administration was willing to surrender Air National Guard fighter units across the country by retiring aircraft that were not being replaced. We are replacing. But under the Trump administration, we're correcting that injustice, and that starts right here in Michigan, where we have a big commitment to Michigan and to the state, even beyond this. This is an exciting time for the United States military. Since November, enlistment numbers for every branch of the armed forces have surged. Recruitment is now the highest it's been in 39 years. Now, if you remember that, you better hold on to those jobs or somebody will take them. Somebody will take those jobs so fast. Hold on to those jobs. Don't leave that job. Who would have thought? Because prior to November 5th, which is Election Day, I was hearing that recruitment was so bad, it was so impossible, it was hard to get people. And this goes not only for the armed forces, for the police, for firemen. People are proud of our country again. Big difference. But we had the worst numbers that we've ever had virtually. We couldn't get anybody, and now we're overstocked. We have waiting lists of people wanting to sign up and be with the military. They're proud of our country again. And I'll be supporting a record-setting $1 trillion investment in our national defense. We're going to go $1 trillion, the largest in the world, largest ever in our country, but no other country's invested that much. We have a $1 trillion budget for military this year, and we have tremendous plans, including increasing the scope of Selfridge. And I recently signed an order to begin construction of the Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect our homeland from missile attack. We're going to call it the Golden Dome. We had the Iron Dome, but somehow, Gretchen, Golden Dome sounds better to me. I don't know. Maybe it's not. What do you like better, Golden Dome or Iron Dome? What do you like better? Golden, let's have a vote. Golden Dome. Oh, no, I think we're in trouble. Oh. How about the Iron Dome? Good, keep it, that's good. Because we made all the changes already, it'll be a little bit tough. Even the renderings look very golden, look beautiful. No, it's going to be incredible. The latest and the greatest. A lot of it's going to be made in Michigan. A lot of it is going to be made, the Golden Dome. You know, other countries have it. In particular, Israel has it. And we have a much more advanced, and theirs is very good. We helped do it. We did it. But we have an advanced version now that really is incredible what it does. We had a case study of 169. Out of 169, every one of them just shut down. And I think we're entitled to it, don't you? I think we're entitled to it as a country. America's military will soon be stronger and more powerful than ever before, and Selfridge Air National Guard Base will remain at the center of the action. And I just want to say we're building some of the greatest submarines and various other ships, but submarines in particular, we have a monopoly on great submarines. We're building the greatest in the world, most powerful machine ever built. And we're doing some things that are just incredible. In one way, you hate to do it, but in another way, you really have no choice. And we're fighting very hard on the China front and the Russia front with Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East, and a lot of good things. You're going to be hearing a lot of good things. It's a shame. When I left office not so long ago, we had no wars. We defeated ISIS in 3 weeks. It was supposed to take 5 years, they told me. Sir, it's going to take about 5 years. We did it in 3 weeks. Raisin Cain, he's now your top, you know, he's your top person. He's the head of the Joint Chiefs. And I did that because he was the one. He said, sir, we can do it in 3 weeks. I said, 3 weeks? They told me 5 years. No, sir, you can do it in 3 weeks, sir. And I said, let's see if you can do it. And he did it. He had a little time left over, actually. And ISIS was gone, totally defeated. And he's the man we wanted. That's the man I said, if I do this again, I'm going to put that guy in charge, because he did things that nobody else was able to do. And nobody else even thought it or even suggested. So I'm very proud to have him head up the whole military operation, along with Pete and some other great people. So I just want to say that Michigan, it's been my great honor to be here. I've had tremendous success in Michigan. Not all Republicans have, but I have. And not just this time either. We had we did tremendously well in 2020, and we did incredibly well in 2016. In 2016, they said it couldn't be won. You know, it couldn't be won, but we won, and we won by a lot. So it's a special place, and I don't forget my friends, and Michigan's been my friend. And I want to just thank everybody here. I want to congratulate you, actually, because there are a lot of people wanted this to happen to their neck of the woods, but it's happening for you. So congratulations, and God bless you all. God bless our military, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Congratulations, everybody. Congratulations.
Only because the Commander-in-Chief invited me. Mr. President, thank you for restoring the warrior ethos inside our formations, for rebuilding our military, reestablishing deterrence around the world, and making Americans proud to wear the uniform. That recruiting surge we're seeing right now is because they know they have a Commander-in-Chief that has their back. That's my message to these men and women every single place we go. All I ever wanted when I was in combat was to know that my commander had my back, no matter what. And with Donald J. Trump, that commander has your back. And that means something to the men and women of America, and that's why we're seeing a record surge in recruiting. That's why we're locking down our southern border. That's why our enemies know we mean business, because we have a commander-in-chief that has our back, and he has the back of this base as well. God bless you all. Thank you.
We are here to break down the first 100 days of President Donald Trump's second presidency. But Kevin, that's no small task.
You got that right. And President Trump wasted no time in bringing his vision for America through his policy plan, Fiona.
That's right. And it seems like this administration, it's been dominating those headlines every single day.
Yes, absolutely. So we've tried our best to narrow it down to the most consequential moments in the beginning of this administration. And it starts with Immigration. That was
Absolutely.
something so important to President Trump, especially saw that on the campaign trail right here. On day one, President Trump set into motion the designation of Mexican cartels as terrorists.
That's right. In fact, on just the first day alone, President Trump signs 26 executive orders showing that he's serious about this issue.
Yeah, and Fiona, what we're looking at are drugs and guns seized by cartels. And I mean, Senator Tom Cotton says that cartels have killed more Americans than any terrorist organization in history.
Yeah, so if we look up there, January 20th, President Trump signs the Securing Our Borders Act. What does that do? That calls for the wall to be built. That calls for unauthorized individuals to not be allowed into the country, and for any of them in the country to be detained and then deported.
Yeah, I mean, Trump calls this an invasion, Fiona.
That's right. And then we go, same thing, January 20th, President Trump starts to try and end birthright citizenship. That means even if you're born on U.S. soil, you might not end up a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, and this is a huge shift because there's a long-standing held American belief that if you're born here, you're an American citizen.
That's right. And then he also creates Doge. That's, of course, the Department of Government Efficiency. Initially, it was just to help him with his goals of government efficiency as well as technology modernization.
Yes, that's right. And so Elon Musk is going to be stepping back. So we'll see what happens with Doge. But we move up to day 5, and we have a very significant confirmation at this point.
That's right. Pete Hegseth confirmed as Secretary of Defense.
Yes, there were some questions, though, surrounding his background, but he ultimately got that Senate confirmation vote to lead the largest agency in the country, the one that protects us. We're going back to immigration now, again, a big theme in this administration.
That's right, Kevin. Day 10, President Donald Trump signs the Laken-Riley Act, which aims to protect Americans from violent illegal criminals inside the country.
Yes, and that's nearly 60 Democrats in Congress who voted for this, so this got bipartisan support. It's a major legislative win for President Trump, his first bill signed. Take a look at what Laken-Riley's mother said.
There's no
on the
amount of
signing.
change that will ever bring back our precious Laken. Our hope moving forward is that her life saves lives. We're so thankful that her passion for helping others and her legacy for doing good in the name of Jesus Christ will carry on. Thank you.
It's just so sad, Fiona, what happened to Laken-Riley. I mean, a 22-year-old college student murdered while on a jog at the University of Georgia campus.
Absolutely. It was a devastating case. The headlines every day. Very, very sad.
Yes.
We're going to move on now to date 15, Kevin.
Yeah, so Doge head Elon Musk says of USAID that they're shutting it down. He says that this agency is full of corruption and they cut 83% of the contracts.
Now, there were credible allegations here that this money was going to terrorists and that these NGOs, they were hiding their identities, they were overcharging the U.S., and that they were not rooting out corruption.
Yeah, but not without pushback. Workers went on strike. There were protests. The courts had to come in. Supreme Court eventually said, hey, you got to pay those $2 billion in contracts.
That's
When
right.
we move up to day 24, we got some key confirmations here. 2 former Democrats that you see right here. Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence.
Now, she was a little controversial, actually, Kevin, because of a previous comment she had made where she said that it was U.S., quote, hostility that pushed Russia's annexation of Crimea.
Yeah, well, and here you have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He was confirmed Health and Human Services Secretary. Again, controversy surrounding him because he is very big on vaccine safety. Not everyone agrees with his views.
But now his goal is to make America healthy again, the MAHA movement, as we've been seeing.
There you go.
So there you go. 2 interesting cabinet picks that were confirmed. Mostly interesting because they were former Democrats, but of course there were a lot of other secretaries that were confirmed as well.
Yeah, that's right. You see immigration featuring big here, but there's probably something that we need to talk about, and that is the war in Europe. And President Trump has made a point at ending this war. And here you see Ukrainian President Zelensky visiting the White House. Here's the 2 of them in the Oval Office, Fiona.
Kevin, that February 28th, heated exchange.
Yes, that's right. So take a look at what happened on that day.
Disrespectful to the country, this country, that's
with
back
all
to
respect
you,
to your
far
office.
more than a lot of people said they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
Nothing yet, but President Trump has been trying to fast-track a peace deal here.
That's right. And February 28th as well, we see record low border crossings. In the month of February, crossings lowered to just under 12,000.
Yes, that's a huge reversal from what we saw under the Biden administration when that peak in December 2023 saw about 300,000 illegal crossings.
That's right. And we're going to move on day 47 through 48, Kevin.
Yeah, so we're back to academia, Fiona, right? And this is when President Trump defunded Columbia University, cutting $400 million in grants and other monies to the school over an alleged failure to protect students from anti-Semitism.
Now, those pro-Palestinian protests, they made headlines everywhere, Kevin. We even saw reports of Jewish students fleeing campus because they feared for their safety. Now, President Trump, he's taken a hardline stance on this issue.
Oh, Fiona, that is right. And the very next day, Khalil Mahmoud, he was arrested. He's one of the organizers of these protest encampments. And the judges first said, no, you can't deport him. But then later on, they said that he could. So again, immigration featuring really big. We're coming up to the halfway mark.
That's right. Day 50, halfway through 100 days. 32,000 plus are ICE arrests, Kevin.
Oh, absolutely. To give you some context, on average, those numbers mean that Trump is moving 7 times faster than the last fiscal year, the Biden administration, to remove those that are deemed to be public safety or national security threats.
That's right. And it's important to note here that these arrests were made at large, which means they were made in the public, in the workplace, not in jails.
Yep.
And we're going to move on day 53 now. President Trump, he meets with NATO chief Mark Rutte. Rutte actually praises President Trump's diplomacy here, saying that he's partially the reason why the EU has agreed to invest over 800 billion euros into defense in the upcoming years.
Yeah, and something important to note is that, Fiona, remember when Trump said that the United States would not defend NATO countries if they don't meet their financial obligations.
Yeah, that's right, Kevin. And we're going to move on day 54 through 55.
Okay, so this is the Alien Enemies Act that President Trump invoked, in which over 200 members of the people who the Trump administration deemed to be members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and the notorious street gang MS-13 were removed from this country, deemed public safety threats.
And once again, Kevin, here, it shows that President Trump is serious about this because this act is usually used in times of war. But of course, the U.S. is not at war right now.
Yes, and so the ACLU, they spoke up, and then the Trump administration was blocked from using this law, and the Supreme Court stepped in and said, nope, you cannot use this to deport illegal immigrants.
All right, so we're at day 55 right now, just a little over the halfway point of 100 days. President Trump has done a lot to curb illegal immigration and to make promises made, promises kept, right?
Well, that's right, and that's what they say. And now, so there were some hiccups along the way, and we come to the signal leak. That is a big accident in which Defense Secretary Hegseth was on a call, and a journalist was accidentally put on there, and Hegseth was talking about actual details for the attack on the terrorist Houthis in Yemen. So that is a big hiccup that we have to put a light on.
That's right. So that signal chat, Representative Jason Crow actually said this would have been grounds for resignation from Secretary Hegseth because he said that if terrorists had gotten their hands on that information, it could have put the lives of American service members at risk.
Yes, right. So we're coming up to day 61. This is when Colombia is back in the picture.
That's right. Colombia concedes to President Trump's demand. However, this is still an ongoing talk. It's not finalized just yet.
Yeah, and then a couple of days later, you see Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in El Salvador at CCOT, the terrorist confinement center. And behind her are those, again, people deemed to be Tren de Aragua, MS-13 members. And she's sending a message saying, hey, if anyone wants to come to the United States and harm Americans, that could be their future.
And it's also highlighting a growing collaboration between the U.S. and El Salvador. Very interesting dynamic there.
Okay, so now we fast forward up to day 73, the big one.
The big one, Kevin, Liberation Day, according to President Donald Trump. That's the day he put this across-the-board 10% tariff on a bunch of countries, and it went all the way up to 34% for China, although, Kevin, that number, as we know, has gone up now.
Yeah, and see that long list here. Trump's trying to use that as leverage. He's saying that America's getting the short end of the stick in these trade deals, and it's harming workers and companies. But here's what Trump said on that day.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
Okay, so not long after that, day 79, that's when China retaliated. Because again, there's these tit-for-tat tariffs. U.S. is putting 145% tariffs on Chinese exports. China, 125% on American goods.
Although President Trump has said here that if China comes to the negotiating table, these tariffs will come down significantly, although they will not go down to zero.
Yeah, and there's still more to that story, too. I mean, it goes on.
That's right. 75 nations, April 16th, according to the White House, 75 nations had already come to the negotiating table over these tariffs. tariffs.
Yeah, that's right. Again, President Trump says that it's a national emergency, these trade deficits, and at one point 15 countries were already in active negotiations. And backing up to academia again, on April 14th, that's when Harvard was defunded.
That's right, a $2.2 billion federal government funding frozen by the Trump administration because Harvard said it will not follow the Trump administration's demands.
Yeah, Fiona, Trump wants Harvard to end the DEI hires, so you got to have merit-based admissions and hires and so on.
That's right. All right, we move on to our last point here. Day 97, President Trump, he meets with President Vladimir Zelensky at the Vatican before Pope Francis's funeral.
Yes, absolutely. Again, these two meeting several times in order to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. However, it has not proved fruitful, at least at this point in time.
Yeah, that's right. Trump has said that a deal would involve Russia getting Crimea, although Ukraine has said ceding Crimea is a red line for the country.
Yeah, and beyond that, it's even legal experts say that that wouldn't even be law. Like, that would just be completely against the law. Because Putin took it by force. Remember those little green men that just gobbled up the government in Crimea?
That's right. All right, there we go. Day 97. We're at the end of President Trump's 100 days back in office. He's done a lot on illegal immigration, tariffs, Doge, the border. A lot has been done.
Yes, that's exactly right. So what you just saw was a snapshot, the summary of the beginning of Trump's second term, and we're going to have more 100-day coverage for you coming up.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.